I, Shilpa, I find quite a lot of that is open, not muted by you. See, sound is coming.
Sir, you have joined with the two systems.
Huh? What is that?
Sir, Mr. Goyal has joined in two system. He has to unmute anyone now.
Okay. गोयल साहब आपका एक सिस्टम बंद करिए गोयल साहब गोयल जी
Okay, I'm doing it.
It's giving a lot of sound. So we are exactly at 4 o'clock. Good afternoon and good evening to all my valued panelists and the participants. On behalf of the ENQUBE collaboration and on my personal behalf, I extend a hearty welcome to all of you. The ENQUBE collaboration, as all of you are aware, that it's a think tank organization engaged in organizing a lot of knowledge imparting programs. And in the last 2.5 years, we have done more than almost 30 such webinars. And I'm very happy that on all the subjects, we have received overwhelming response, and in our social media, both in the WhatsApp, your YouTube and LinkedIn, that upload of the program has been again seen quite a lot of people. And I'm very thankful that each of the program we had the presence of very eminent panelists. And today we are again joining for a very important subject. As all of you are aware, that our Prime Minister of India gave a call on the 15th, August 2014, as well as 2019, that India should achieve 5 trillion economy by 2024-25. And during that period, it was almost within the reach of the India to reach that threshold level. But the fact that we had 2019-20 also, and that the growth rate had come down around almost 4%, below 4%. And later, of course, due to the COVID, both the successive 2 years, 1 year we had a negative contribution of minus 6.6, and the next year is around 8.8 growth. So that revival has been extremely good. And later, of course, in the current year, again, the geopolitical situation, what is arising of Ukraine and Russia war, and the parallelly due to the supply chain bottlenecks, as well as the again COVID coming in China and the lockdown and the supply chain disruption, the entire world has having the problem of inflation, and there will be a definitely setback to the GDP growth. So, but India in the first two now, April, May, we had the buoyancy in growth, but now the inflation has been a worry, as well as the oil price going high, more than the maybe 110, 128 dollars per barrel. Now, it is Reserve Bank has reduced the GDP growth from 7.8 to 7.2. And now a few of the agencies are again reducing the growth to maybe 6.8 and all. But, and the next year again, maybe 7.5%, maybe the growth. And the Reserve Bank report on monetary, our currency and future talked about that the whatever the output we lost during the COVID, that we would take a long time maybe to make up that output lost. And of course, currently again, we may be at the 2.7 trillion US dollar economy. And that's why this 2024-25 would have been now think maybe 2026-27, or maybe to the earlier to that. That is the estimation. And similarly, we had to cross 10 trillion economy by 2030, which may be around 33, 34. This is the revised estimation, a few of them. Now, against that, India is celebrating its Amrit Mahotsav. We have completed 75 years of our independence. And in these 75 years, what are all we have achieved? and what are the positive various initiatives and achievements, and what are the opportunities for India now, and what are the challenges, and how are we going to overcome them. And that's why our Prime Minister has again asked that we should write our vision plan for 2047. This is almost in the working. And parallelly, there was the Niti Aayog one document on India 75. And it is actually a document to have a lot of strategy in around 42 sectors. So in this background, we are today having this webinar that India at 75 towards 100, and the India and Indian economy, what are the opportunities, challenges, and the road ahead. So we have very eminent personalities, and currently also there is another area that India and the world over, we are having the climate action and sustainability, and we are also all the corporates and all adapting towards ESG. And the other sector, of course, we are having a lot affected due to COVID, health sector, education sector, and such other like water or clean water and nutritious food security, all that issue importance in terms of the social sector. Whereas the physical infrastructure, we have been doing well in terms of the road, ports, or airport, and in all that we are advanced. So how are these all sectors are going to shape up, and what should be our contribution of agriculture in our vision of doubling the farmers' income? And can India be a manufacturing hub as the China strategy, which we are China plus one strategy? Are we taking full advantage of that? And there is also discussion, India need not adopt the same China model of manufacturing. We need to be little different, and some initiatives have been taken. And the service continues to be the major sector of our growth. So these are all the factors which will figure today and in the webinar. Apart from that, the employmentability, unemployment, and the labor participation, and how the India has really now actually done well in improving the poverty ratio in a way that even though COVID period some effect, but from the earlier level we have improved. So how the per capita income is going to, because growth is the essence. Unless the growth takes place in an average of 8.5%, or maybe 9%, but the backlog of COVID which we have to cover, we will not be able to achieve the that level of GDP. So can the India be 25 trillion economy by 2047? That is my question. So we have, of course, Shailesh Haribhakti. He is the authority on the ESG and climate action. And we have Mr. Charan Singh, who is the great economist, as well as the professor from the Reserve Bank of India, and earlier, and he was also working in Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. And he has been now the chief executive of ENQUBE, one of the very think tank organization, produces a lot of research papers, and it is worth that we should visit that site and have a look on that. And of course, later we have Mr. Professor Anant Narayan, who is the earlier ex-Standard Chartered Bank, and he's an authority on forex and the money, what you call markets, more than 25 years of experience, worked in Citibank, Deutsche Bank, and he's in the very important board. He was one of the person chosen by the Reserve Bank to be in the RBI board, in the S Bank board by the RBI. And the S Bank has revived. And he's also a professor today. And he's what you call everywhere he talks, and he very freely that way. And he's the authority on that. And he's in various committees. And later we have Professor M.M. Goyal. And M.M. Goyal, not only India and abroad, both in South Korea and USA and everywhere. And he has won the award for Excellence Award in the abroad. And after that, India, the Kurukshetra University, I may not be able to tell, but all the private universities, and latest now, of course, and also I think that one of the national university also, government and the private sector university. I have a small presentation on their respective what you call introduction, but I thought I will first make my own attempt. And I have seen the last one was Starex University, Gurgaon. He worked, and he's the founder and of the Neonomics, which is now talking on the Bhagavad Gita principles as well as what you call equity for all. So he's the on that. And we know R. Govindan, one of my very old our contacts and friend, and he has been kind enough to come various our webinars. He is the senior vice president and in the what you call in the L&T group, and he is responsible for the entire corporate finance, risk management, enterprise risk management, and various M&M deals, and he is authority on the entire market, and he is also having a very positive look at globally India and abroad, and he has so he is also here. And then we have Mr. Ashish Pandey, who is my good friend, and we were together in Corporation Bank, and he has been with us in the treasury. Later he moved to Union Bank of India, worked in various places and became the CGM operations, and he was also in the chairman secretariat. And in the recently in the December 2021 he moved to Bank of Maharashtra as the executive director, and today he is heading the credit and other various important, and he is having always a vision of what you call very high growth as well as quality growth, and he believes in digitalization and technology, and he is also believes in what you call management by exception. So I welcome him. And after that we have 1 minute. Yeah, our Srikanth Panigrani. I think he is one of the authority in the government, and he has been working as the Prime Minister's envy in the climate action, and even now he is in the Indian Institute of Sustainable Development as the Director General, and he also has in the various PSUs he has headed, and he works on corporate governance, ESG, climate action, sustainability, green finance, and today he's required by both India and abroad for his address. So I also extend a hearty welcome to all of you, also Mr. Srikanth. And last, we have Mr. Krishnan Sitaraman, Senior Director, Financial Sector and the Ratings, as well as Structured Finance. And he's from CRISIL. And he has been in the sector for quite a long time. And he has also prepared so many papers and what you call research from the CRISIL. And he goes both in India and abroad to talk on the what you call financial sector. And he has been my what you call always our program. He has been able to come and help us. Now our another colleague from CRISIL, economist Deepti Deshpande, should have been here, but for the fact that somebody at her relatives had not well, and she had to rush to Bangalore, and that is slightly, we have missed one great economist. She's a senior economist from the CRISIL, and anyhow, Mr. Krishnan will cover some of that point also. In a way, we have the very good eminent panelist, and we have enough time today. 3 hours we are there having. Of course, it all depends upon how the program. So with this, I now show the formal their PPT or presentation, and then come back to each of them to talk on the subject. Once again, I extend a hearty welcome to all of you, and please be there. Yeah. Madam, you are able to see the presentation?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So this is the very formal presentation. In a way, everything has been covered. But I thought because their biodata is so large that it could be only shown in this fashion now. So this is Shailesh Haribhakti, as I mentioned, global thought leader in the area of ESG. And I do not wish to again repeat, but just run this. And this is Professor Charan Singh. And he has worked in National Housing Bank and also NABARD. Now he's the NABARD Financial Services director. And of course, he was the executive chairman, non-executive chairman in Punjab and Sindh Bank. That's where. And in the US also had international experience. Yeah. Next is Anant Narayan. See, he's also in various committees: SEBI Mutual Advisory Committee, FICCI Committee, IMA Committee, that is Indian Merchant Chambers, everywhere. So then Professor Goyal, as I mentioned, Jagannath University, then Rajiv Gandhi, that only, National Institute of Youth Development, then Sir Pemburu, all that. And so this is his, and R. Govindan also I have covered. And we have Srikant K. Panigrani, that is a leading sustainable thought leader. And he was the policy maker and technocrat who has worked with the Government of India, United Nations Environment Program, and the World Bank. So today, and the National Science Population Award by Honorable Prime Minister of India, such a great eminent person. And this is Krishnan Sitaraman. Earlier, of course, he was also in the Maruti long back, but structured finance and chief compliance, and now current position of financial sector rating and structured finance. And this is our Deepthi, but we had one Sahar. I would like to bring her in the next time with this. So with this, I once again extend all the participants. Yeah, participants who have come in a large numbers here, as well as all of you, and I'm sure you will enjoy the proceedings. With this, can I request Shilpa to run that video recording of Shailesh Haribhakti again due to some international commitment. He could not come. So can you please run that video, madam? Shilpa?
10 eradications that
Okay.
will make India great at 100. We all understand that India must take the lead in reforming capitalism. A more conscious, woke, and greener capitalism will deliver the promise of a great country at 100. In line with the UN's SDGs, we should focus our efforts on the following eradications to achieve India's Panchamrit as laid out by our Prime Minister at COP26. First eradication: eradicate construction waste being sent to landfills and build better, faster, and cheaper using 3D printing and green cement at scale. All construction demolition waste may be brought under mandatory regulation for separation, reuse, and mixing appropriately with fresh building materials, following international best practices. Particularly valuable may be to accelerate the low-cost home building programs using large 3D printers that may be ordered in bulk. Tailor-made, designed to be fit for use by residents' homes, can be built faster and cheaper if this ecosystem is developed and deployed at scale, particularly in our villages and in our tier 3 and 4 towns. Green cement, the use of renewables to power all kilns and grinders to the extent of 60% by 2030, mandatory waste heat recovery, and burning of municipal waste and non-biodegradable plastic in cement kilns may be made a national priority. For this, the very close alignment and collaboration of all municipalities with nearby cement manufacturing facilities is an idea whose time has come. No construction demolition waste to landfill by 2040 and no fossil fuel by 2047 may be another set of targets. This, coupled with major incentives for carbon capture, may indeed turn India green in cement use. Additionally, if EV vehicles are deployed for mining operations and the logistics chain. The cement is sold in bulk using pre-constructed silos for storage at construction sites. An enormous reduction in carbon footprint can be achieved. Add to this mix a judicious array of new construction materials, reinforced by construction chemicals, and decades can be added to built infrastructure's life. With better airflow and lighting that is natural, the need for air conditioning can be optimized and made a necessity where and when temperatures are unfriendly. Smart grids, smart buildings, and smart power usage can complete the picture. No dust, no unprocessed fly ash, and a responsibility to use least water and to keep the air clean will make construction the engine of growth and sustainability. Second, eradication. Eradicate all coal, gas, and oil. India has the opportunity to be the first fossil fuel-free economy. Maximize solar, wind, hydro, biogas, and green hydrogen capacities. Bring forward use cases in all green hydrogen. Fully utilize the entire installed nuclear capacity with enhanced safety protocols. Invest massively in grid infrastructure, national, state, district, and village level. And integration with minimal wheeling and banking charges, a removal of all free power, and a uniform tariff that is driven by volume of throughput and not cost. These will change the entire way that electricity is made available in a democratized way to our people. Clean, constant power availability at volumes that will rise as we enable the grid infrastructure will lead to a rupees 1 per unit cost to all consumers who must all pay. The telecom experience need to be replicated with massive capacity technology of blockchain, analytics, grid stabilization, low T&D losses, and an automated direct debit-oriented billing and payment mechanism. All state electricity boards will need to be intensely digitized, transformed using best ESG practices, and privatized where found valuable. An experiment worth trying might be using digital regulation, using DAOs or digital autonomous organizations as regulators. As cross subsidies get eliminated and prices begin a secular fall, this form of governance is best suited to keep things moving and healthy. All dispute resolution on tariffs and subsidies may be entirely done virtually within 3 years. Full use of smart grids, smart contracts for power purchase and for transfers to the grid can be enabled by 2030, and a full integration of captives into the grid infrastructure by 2040. The Shangri-La of power security will be achieved only when we have full capture and paid for distribution for every unit of power transmitted. Losses in transit can only be technical losses. Eradication 3. Eradicate virgin steel production by 2050. We proved mathematically that the cost of producing steel from scrap and iron ore versus recycled steel is about the same. Logically, therefore, as stranded assets come up for disposal and the world learns to make more from less, all scrapped and surplus vehicles, ships, airplanes, and other machinery that becomes redundant will need to be resmelted and reprocessed into new age machines and mobility support devices. All mobility support vehicles will be either EV or at worst hybrid. Green hydrogen and solar will power most airplanes and ships by 2050. They will also be mostly autonomous and safe. On-demand mobility will save enormous parking spaces excessive production, eliminate all vehicular pollution by 2050. Manufacturing 6.0 will emerge at the convergence of nano, bio, and infotech, making all input-output equations run by machine learning and artificial intelligence-driven algos. All material movement and inventory handling will be digitized. Autonomous and robotic scrap and waste will either tend to be near zero or completely reusable. The old norms of complete circularity will be re-established. India will emerge as an exporter of vehicles, steel, cement, chemicals, spare parts, accessories, and achieve top consistent quality as a result of simulated efficiencies sprouting from manufacturing and material movement 6.0. All supply chains will have an India link by choice, particularly for goods destined for Asia and East Africa. To support these revolutions, inevitably, high-quality ports, inland jetties, rail stations, and airports will be built. Soft infrastructure of crypto, blockchain, cashless, autonomous reporting systems following integrated thinking will concurrently emerge. India's place as the reporting leader of the world will be equally established by 2050. Fourth, eradicate the dependence on low-margin, water-guzzling crops and reallocate land to fruit trees at scale. The only way genuine rural transformation can take place is deploying all drip and other irrigation facilities at scale. Empower the farmer to draw water from natural sources, recharge aquifers, and terrace and store water for year-round usage. The only intervention required is for state governments to give automatic and swift permissions for all thought-out initiatives. Shift land to cash crops, exotic vegetables, and fruits at the rate of 3% of productive land every year for the next 10 years. This will right-size yields, productivity, and mix of output. Inventories will also be brought into control and wastage and storage completely avoided by building a series of silos. Ensure that the market exchange takes place at the farm door, cash for the produce handed over. This and the linkage through free procurement by both government and private buyers to the consumption centers will create a powerful supply chain from farm to fork, which will find heavy investment from agri-tech investors and global food majors. India must aspire to 30% fruit tree allocation and tree plantations exceeding 10 crore per annum for the foreseeable future. This and an education and rural tech support infrastructure will triple farm incomes in 5 years, the only route for India to rise to number 1 here in the Committee of Nations. Next, eradicate legal delays and transform jails. All court and tribunal proceedings may be made virtual. Deploy 1,000 robotic judges with full machine learning AI enablement. Raise pay for all existing judges 10x to make incentives and accountability an embedded part of the judicial process. Template all petitions, pleadings, appeals, and affidavits. Physical hearings to be only when judges and attorneys concur that the issues are complex and precedents are not available. Digitize all laws. Eliminate and consolidate or integrate all laws using 1991 as a cutoff date. The entire pre-independence set of legislations need a complete makeover. And as India enters the digital age, all laws need a refresh. Facilitate e-learning for judges, attorneys, solicitors, and all court officials and staff. All case referencing must be available on an OTT platform, downloadable in court, in offices, and on devices anywhere. High quality, machine learning and artificial intelligence may be deployed to make a better correlation between facts and precedents. Voice to text conversion and clear recording of all pleadings may be put in place in every court, and speaking orders delivered, leaving little room for alternative interpretations of judgments. A maximum period of 6 months may be set as a target for delivering all judgments. Justice in time will transform the attractiveness of India as a business destination. No detainee may be incarcerated without charges for a period exceeding 90 days. The police and enforcement systems may be overhauled by an extensive initiative of templatization, drawing instantly in every location of police process and OTT platform for streaming precedents. Bail must be granted speedily and certainly within 90 days. Sentences may also be tracked over a rolling 5-year period to facilitate objective outcomes. The primary outcomes from incarceration may be, in addition to punishment and retribution, an attempt to improve character and health. Clean prisons with an encouragement to small enterprise type activity may be experimented with, given knowledge of prisoner skill sets. The surplus generated may be utilized for libraries and better maintenance of prisons. Re-engagement programs post-serving sentence may be crafted along with NGOs to bring all prisoners back to normal reformed life. Timelines for executing every process in the system may be laid down with an automated outcome after elapsation. Reforming this bottom of the pyramid offers the best scope for building a fairer, more honest society, ready to face the emerging challenges better, declutter, dismantle, and humanize prisons to achieve the lowest per capita prisoners and accused in the world in 25 years. Next, eradicate lack of access to education. Interconnect all schools, colleges, coaching and tuition classes, and universities through a national education grid. This would enable syllabus sharing, classroom sharing, faculty sharing, and student interactions across the country in a frictionless manner. The internet bandwidth, download capacities, storage capacities, and the availability of net access and time anywhere, anytime, will break all shackles that exist today. EdTech at scale can then be deployed to enable crafting of purpose-led, need-led education, experimentation, and the creation of new content as innovations emerge and disruptions take root. MOOCs, digital classrooms, smart, interactive, 3D, color content, demonstrating every learning nuance can be made available and accessible from anywhere. Continuous use of machine learning and artificial intelligence, trolling by subject, switch back and forth between AR, VR, XR, and text and video would create a teaching learning paradigm that is constantly evolving, but consistent across geographies. Domain-based research and conceptual disruptions can happen parallel to each other, synergizing the creation of advanced learning, auto-generated and created content that is constantly relevant by domain and pertaining to each discovery and disruption can be continually refreshed and kept available to accelerate innovation. Education has to be continuous, lifelong, and available on any device, anywhere, for India to regain its status as a learning powerhouse. Alumni-led governance of every learning institution must be mandated by law. This will retain the momentum of growth, funding, and innovation. Multimedia, interactive education to be available for all by 2040. No person in India should be deprived because of language, device unavailability, access to the internet in a high capability 6G network. Downloads for education should be ubiquitous, speedy, low cost, and magical for the user. Spontaneous pop-up classrooms should be configurable by drawing in cohorts of students and preferred teachers with an ability to compensate for the education online. Teacher pay must reach much higher levels, and they, along with judges and doctors, should be the best compensated professionals. Synchronicity beyond time zone should be the next frontier to be captured. So waking time education can be imbibed from anywhere in the world. Then the best teachers from anywhere will be available to all. Teacher feedback must be mandated for every interaction to form the basis for differentiated compensation and a spur for continuous improvement and innovation. Teachers must be equally empowered with access to the internet and to devices that enable connectivity at all times. At 100, India must regain the title of the most advanced teaching and learning nation. Next, eradicate lack of access to high quality healthcare. Like education, the access to high quality, affordable healthcare must be made a fundamental service available anywhere to all. The infrastructure of 24/7 telehealth, remote robotic surgical interventions, diagnostic information on the cloud, availability of supplies and medicines at far-flung locations, and trained medical service professionals must be invested in continually at a never-before-seen rate. The collaboration of private and public sectors will be the backbone of this new infrastructure establishment. Incentives for the whole value chain will need to be recast to provide for trained doctor availability, both physically and virtually, diagnosis capability using downloads from the cloud of genomic and marker data, and centers that are always accessible to the needy. To reduce the need for sick care, as described above, there is an urgent need to focus on healthcare to deliver healthy and disease-free lifespans. Yoga, immunity supports, regular exercise regimens, cycling as a primary mobility means, tracks for walking, running, cycling, and clean, safe swimming will be the primary building blocks into which massive investment will have to go in. Protocols for good diet, supplemental nutrition, given the map of genomic disposition and blood markers, updated on a yearly basis, will complete the healthcare story. As the rural economy takes off, under the specter of food shortages the world over, it will become necessary to maintain very long and uninterrupted healthy lifespans for the entire population. The opportunity to triple the annual spend on healthcare is now. Next, eradicate newsprint import. Get into de-inking at scale. Every foot of virgin newsprint should be Indian-made. This will create newsprint security, get the idea of circularity embedded in the news industry, and make the operations of media houses sustainable and digital. Target print to digital transformation to create a customer experience of full satisfaction. Deploy AR, VR, XR, digital that is interactive, free of fake news, and leaves no carbon footprint. Next, eradicate the suspicion among fellow Indians and build total trust in each other. We were always meant to be an integrative, tolerant, and democratic nation. Our constitution provides for this explicitly. While we draw up plans to transform the physical, financial, and environmental capitals, the embracing of all diversity with true equity and inclusion of all, with deep respect for human rights, must become a priority so that by India at 100, we emerge as a nation at peace within and with all neighbors. And finally, eradicate the lack of care for animals and other biodiversity, finding homes for strays, feeding and cleaning them, domesticating all and protecting them from brutal death can become a national pride. The entire field of cellular agriculture and growing meat from the cellular structure beckons us. The global expansion of this way to enrich the food cycle and to get rid of food shortages completely is an activity that India can embrace at scale. The scientific temper this will release and the caring, trusting nature that will emerge will bring us in 25 years to be the well-deserved position as a nation.
Thank you, Shailesh Haribhakti. What a beautiful message covering all the very spectrum of matter. And to start with, of course, it is really coming from a very knowledgeable and eminent global thought leader. Now, all other speakers will have the opening remark around 10 or 12 minutes, and that will be followed by some questions on the relative subject also. And then we'll take some of the questions from the audience. Now, since our Ashish Pandey has some appointment at ministry level, I would request Ashish Pandey, ED Bank of Maharashtra, to give his thought on the overall subject as well as the banking sector in particular. Ashish. Ashish Pandey, you are there? Shilpa? Shilpa?
Yes, sir.
Ashish Pandey is not coming. He is there, no?
Yes, sir. Ashish Pandey.
Yeah, please, Ashish, can you speak now? He is available, or otherwise he wanted a little early. Okay. Now he must, I don't know, he's available, but we will come back to Ashish. Now, can I ask Srikanth, Dr. Srikanth Panigreni? Yeah. Yes, sir.
I would like to welcome all of you in this auspicious occasion. And we are celebrating 75 years of India's independence. And prior to that, I would like to congratulate Dr. Narendra and all those, the organizers, Day One Logics, and who has organized this webinar on the eve of 75 years celebration. And with all of our dreams and realities, how India will perform by 2047, when India will be at the 100. So we have a glorious past, and our expectations are also so high, and we are aspiring many things to achieve, and we are in the process of achieving. I'm extremely positive about it that we will be reaching the milestone which Dr. Narendra has presented very beautifully at the beginning. And Sri Shailesh Haribhakti explained his dreams and how the things to be done to achieve it. You must understand the good things are always with us that we have achieved so far, but we have to also be aware that our entire planet is going through a transition. We have national problems, we have international problems. From my rich experience of working with UN, World Bank, and Government of India is the key policymaker, I can tell you in brief, see the impact of climate change. We have 1.5 2 degrees centigrade above temperature that we can withstand, we can tolerate. And it should not increase more than 1.5. So with this, there is a lot of negative impact. We have lost 30% of our global biodiversity. We have a huge crisis both in terms of quality and quantity of water. We have reduced considerable agricultural productivity, leading food crisis, which is looming up. And you can see the developments in global hunger index in post-COVID era. All the commitments and the desires, the global community and we at India are aspiring. If you see UN SDG goals, 17 goals, all the 17 goals are very promising. And we have our policy framework to achieve it. The Indian states are competing, there are constant monitoring, the policy formulations are taking place. I was instrumental to work with Dr. Kalam in the Planning Commission when he was principal scientific advisor to Prime Minister. And that was a project India wants to be a global knowledge leader. India as a knowledge leader and the strategies for transformation. So how India's service sector potential can be maximized, and by 2020 India could be a developed country. And Vision 2020. This is 2 documents I worked with him, and it was strategic papers. You can see the document, it is there in Niti Aayog's website. And the same document, India as a knowledge superpower, strategies for transformation, that is taking place. But we are at 23%, what India has aspired at 2000. So that is only at 23% we are there. Our journey is there in right direction. And whatever Shailesh Haribhakti told, that all are there in Government of India's policies. And the implementation pace is very slow. And there are many reform issues, and all of us are aware of. So I was recently in one of the Amrit Azadi Ki Amrit Mahotsav program organized by Ministry of Finance and particularly Department of Economic Affairs. And where RBI governor was there, and Chief Economic Advisor V. Ananta Nageshwar was there. And they viewed that India is targeting and could be $20 trillion economy by 2040. And our plans, programs, strategies, policies, government policies has been designed and are in the process of designing, keeping that in mind as a goalpost. And how that will be achieved if the GDP of India, that is the dollar GDP of India, doubles in every 7 years. So how that could be possible? The strategies and the path, policy path, and the implementation mechanism, both at state level and the central level, was discussed. It was very interesting. And right now, we are at a per capita income by 2020 is around roughly $2,000 per annum, $2,000, which is likely to reach at $15,000 by 2040. That's the projection. And there are many projections, many research studies are taking place. But the most important thing to worry about is our ocean currents have changed. The hot currents has become cold currents, and the air pressure belts are not the similar. So you know what is happening. The disasters are very often, and both the west coast, east coast, and all of the country, we have a lot of problems with natural calamities. So the climate change is the one of the biggest threats to humanity, and we need to do a lot, and we have hardly doing anything. And our climate action, as per the international requirement or national level programs and planning, is unfortunately not able to be in the tune with. However, India has always taken a leadership in the forefront and promised very aspiring goals, and India is constantly working in its goalpost. India is one among first three in achieving its commitment so far. And in Paris, we prepared a document as INDC, Intended National Determined Contribution for India, and it was presented and it was approved. In Kyoto Protocol, India is a developing country. We doesn't had any target. The developed country and the industrial countries had the target, but hardly 11.23% they could able to deliver. So there was a huge gap. Whatever they committed, they could not able to do. And now, but India did a lot voluntary, which was not India's target, or India was asked to do because of its emissions. Because the Kyoto Protocol failed in Paris, it is desired that those who have polluted, they are not able to compensate. So let anybody who is coming forward to do their best, let us do, because planet is the only home for all of us, and our survival is linked to planetary conditions beyond country boundaries. Anybody is polluting any part of the world, rest others are getting affected. There is a lot of carbon space debate and all that. I am not going into that. But I would like to inform, we prepared a approach paper for the Prime Minister. He is there in G7, the climate and sustainability commitments of India. You must be aware, I was along with Honorable Prime Minister in COP26, where he declared Panchamrit. Panchamrit is 5 things he committed to the world, which basically we estimated and gave him handouts, which he declared as Panchamrit. The first one is, he told that India will get its non-fossil energy capacity to 500 gigawatt. It is not a small commitment, it's a huge commitment. Considering India's present situation, India has a strong ambition and capacity. The finance is the major constraints. 500 gigawatt. We are at 175 gigawatt. We are approaching, and we are almost reached. We could reach in 500. There is a white paper which we have prepared. It is possible. The major constraint is $223 billion we require to the tune of investment to meet our green goals, which we have committed in COP26 as our advanced NDC, National Determined Contribution. Whatever we have committed in Paris, we have increased it manifold in COP26 in Glasgow recently, in last November. The second commitment was that India will meet 50% of its energy requirement through renewable route. or non-fossil route. Non-fossil means along with renewable, nuclear and hydro is also included. Large-scale hydro also included. That is although little tough, but we will achieve it. The next is India's carbon intensity should be at the above 45%. It is again another higher milestone, but we will achieve the benchmark. And the so net zero by 2070. Actually, India, the way India is doing its climate change commitment, we are in quite in advanced stage. And if this tempo and trend continues, we will likely to be carbon net zero or carbon neutral by 2043. That is our internal calculation. So by 2047, when India is likely to be 100, I personally expect we can easily achieve net zero, and we are capable of. The only risk factor is change in policies, change in government, and there are many unexpected natural calamities and the COVID-like situation. So those are the bottlenecks. Otherwise, and let me tell you very clearly, the kind of the investment we require is the topmost hindrance. Bloomberg NEF has a projection that $223 billion in investment India will be requiring to achieve its green goal by 2030. And for that, public investment is not enough. We need a lot of private capital and investment to flow into it.
Srikantji?
Yes, I will be covering major points and come to a conclusion.
Yeah, I will come back to you, sir, again. Okay, or you have, because that our Ashish, no?
I will take only 2 minutes more.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This 223 billion that India will be requiring, it will produce 15 crore green jobs, which is huge. Some point of time, we have development is as the key objective. There is nothing called development now. It is all sustainable development, and it is all green development, because we have no options left. To protect ourselves, to protect the planet, we need to adopt cleaner targets, which was very much emphasized by Honorable Shailesh Saraswati ji as well. So all our corporates, leading Indian corporates, has committed. Wipro has committed by 2040. Reliance has committed by 2035. Vedanta is committed by 2050. Infosys, TCS, all has committed the IT companies by 2030, and Mahindra has committed by 2040 to become net zero. We will be needing, we have a carbon disclosure project which monitors the industry's disclosure. And if we are not doing the right thing in right time in green investment space, the Indian industries will face the pinch of around 7.14 lakh crores by 2030. So this is a huge alarming factors. So the industries has policies has should have their own, in their own interest of their own survival, the national and planetary growth and prosperity. They have to formulate their policy. ESG has become the basic of the industrial policy framework now. SEBI has a mandatory business responsibility and sustainability reporting requirement from 2021 March 10th for the first market cap 1,000 companies. And to achieve this, the annual reports has to be clogged with sustainability reports and integrated reporting in the form of integrated report needs to be published in the interest of the shareholders' investment. In the interest of time, I would not like to continue. I would like to thank you,
Dr.
Dr. Narendra, for time and so forth.
Thank you,
Thank you very
Srikant ji.
much. Thank you very much.
Be there. We'll come back to you also. There is a lot of opportunity of sustainable finance is needed. That will lead to a lot of investment, and that will add to the GDP. And the ESG is another area which will create value for all the stakeholders, which corporates as well as, of course, regulator also bringing guidelines. Now we have Ashish Pandey, ED, Bank of Maharashtra. Since he has an appointment with the minister, I would request him to now give his opening remarks on the banking sector as well as the real economy and what are the other role the financial sector can play in achieving the target of our GDP. Now he said, Saab has said 20 trillion by 2040. So 2047 it will be 25 trillion. So Ashish Pandey. Ashish?
Am I audible?
Yeah. Please continue.
Good afternoon to all esteemed panelists and also the participants of this webinar. And right now, all of us, we know that we are celebrating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. And this topic which we are discussing, really, it is heart touching, I should say. India at 75 moving towards 100 Indian economy. And today we are talking about 2047. Certainly, first of all, compliments to ENQUBE collaboration and Dr. Narendra, for bringing this topic and actually making all of us think that where it is, and also the participants who are very keen to understand how it is and where we will be heading. So thanks a lot, sir. Now coming, if we take the snapshot last 50, 70 years, in very brief, that we were the states, various princely states and then country. And if we see the growth which has happened, so 4.4 during 70s, 5.5 during 1990s, 2000, 7% late 20s and above 7 post that. However, we got stuck up into the COVID, post that in between, but then the aim is 5 trillion 2025, 10 trillion by 30 and 20 by 40, which is we can understand from Panigrahi Sahib. And we also, very enlightening sort of Hari Bhakti Sahib, what he expressed, that how we can move it. So there are a lot of accomplishment: green revolution, white revolution, industrial revolution, whatnot. Finally, the Jandan Aadhaar Mobile, Jan Trinity, and Ayushman Bharat and Gati Shakti. So in brief, I'm just touching in brief how it has moved. And today we are, let me share with you, because a banker is a different, I should say, a sector, a lender, because lender is one file, they get the economy, feel of the economy. Lending is one of the basic responsibilities, but at the same time, lender being involved, in the lending, get the first, I should say, it is my gut feel, they get the first, the cut of the demand coming up in the economy, how economy is behaving, where demand is coming, where the production capacity is moving, what people feel about, the increasing sales or other things. So I will touch upon that. But today, if we take, the country leads in the IT, fintech, space technology, and whatnot. Now coming that today, even if we take this financial year, till now, we are very close to the first half. So 14 unicorn we have produced, which is again third to the world. The first is being US, China, and third. Now, present economy, if we take, yes, COVID, we suffered, all of us, it is a world phenomena, I should say, but then the country was the first to rebound fast. And Vaccine, yes, again we lead the citizens, but then giving support to the world for getting it vaccinated. So we are now support to the world also. Challenges, yes, inflation, because many times when I speak to the economist, and certainly from the CRISIL side, madam was there, still she's not there. But then certainly there are some reservation which comes, on the growth side and all. But let me share with you as a banker, because last almost for, I should say, 2 months, 60 days, I am moving almost 35, 40 cities. I have had a customer meets and meeting to the people who are doing visiting the units. What personally I feel that people are want to move very fast on the capacity expansion. They really are actually looking for the support on the equity side and also on the lending side. People do have orders in hand. The thing is, what they want is basically that the capital should come fast, or maybe the lending part should come fast, loan part, and they do have things in place. What is also happening simultaneously, because there were two challenges, like one I said, inflation, another the geopolitical tensions, which are in the different parts of the world. So certainly, I should say the way in which Gati Shakti and the other things are happening, the freight corridor, Mumbai, Delhi, the freight trains running at the speed of 160 kilometers per hour without any stop, the things which are happening around, say, I should say Nagpur, Baroda, and all these central places of India. So I think we are moving towards best of the supply chain. I feel this best supply chain is very, very important if we want the manufacturing center, the manufacturing activity to grow up. So I believe this is the one thing. But I always I always say that we are in a 6 lane. The economy is in 6 lane. When we are talking right now, 5 trillion, say by 25, and by 10 by 30, and then 20 by 40. So the days has gone where the 10-foot road was there, and when truck used to come, we used to stop our Fiat and Ambassador so that only one vehicle can cross. Today we are in a 6 lane road, and the car itself is the which can run with the all airbags, 6 to 8 airbags, and power steering, the power engine, the power brakes, and everything is in place, and the speed having 120, 140 kilometers per hour. So I think we opportunities are huge, which I see personally, and as also as a lender. And when we move to the various constituents, whether medical, hospital, medicine, means I want to say pharma, or the steel, or the cement, or the textile, or what's not, the all the sectors. So I feel personally this is the we are in a 6 lane road. Only now we should know. Personally, this is again what you can say, the experience and the way in which interaction and the feedback is. We should be very, very, we should know the vehicle which we are running. Say suppose any good vehicle, where is the airbag, where is the power steering, where is the automatic gear, and how it behaves. So the thing is, what are the enablers? Enablers is IT, because it is a yuga of management by exception. Now, if I take my own banking experience, so the branch which was catering to say 700 or 1,000 loan accounts, and say 1,500 SB or CD accounts, now the same branch is handling around 4,000 loan accounts, and say 6,000 the CASA accounts. Now the question is, can they do everything with all these accounts? It is impossible in human capacity. So similarly is I was listening very carefully to Shailesh Bhai. So he was very, very, very well. He was explaining the artificial intelligence and machine learning and whatnot is going to take place. So I believe the IT means I am just taking digitalization inclusive of it, and the artificial intelligence and all sort of robotic process automation inclusive of that. The second is very important, because the in technology will only integrate, technology will only make the things feasible. The most important thing which is going to help all of us is the data, whether the unstructured data or the structured data, whether the inside data or whether the outside data. Until and unless the ecosystem is created with the data, use of the proper technology, I believe that is going to be the predictive side of the story. So even when I was listening to Panigrahi Sahib, he was very clearly telling, they expect nil carbon. So it is basically how it is, the data which is at present, data is going to be further, what is going to be added in the environment. And I think the biggest change which we are now looking to is seeing is basically we are talking about ESG. Let us also think that we are talking about ESG today. So we mean that the production and the capacity and whatnot will go. The roads will be built, the infrastructure will be built, the dry port, the wet port, and all this will be built going forward. But at the same time, the environmental has to be protected. The equity among the people has to be protected. And what actually, last 2 months, as I said, I was moving. So around more than, I think I would have met some 120 students who were going abroad, which are sanctions are given by the bank. So I was surprised to note that somebody is going for the space science, somebody is going for the cyber security thing, and somebody. So I was just stunned to see that how people are going forward and how they are going and meeting. So they are going to be the scientists of the country. So I believe this is the thing. Now coming to the lender, because there we are the key component of the economy, the 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 number of loans which are going to be underwritten, the number of loans which are going to be monitored, the number of loans which are going to be the supervised for keeping the asset quality in place. So I believe the same thing which is equally important for all the industries and for us also is the IT data and the data analysis and the digitalization and the management by exception, which I said very clearly, because we cannot do everything. So the system should flag whether it is a cement industry or whether what not. Even I would say the auto industry, where you have to, deliver the car, then certainly it shows which car is in deficient, whether white or black or red. So this is the thing. And the banks, the going forward, when we are talking about the 225, 5 trillion, 10 trillion, 20 trillion, and 25, as Dr. Narendra sir has said. So probably the amalgamation which has happened, where the 3 banks, 4 banks have come, and they are finding the place in the prime database, and they are moving with the technology, with the ease agenda of the government of India. So I believe this is going to make a lot of difference going forward, and it is an important pillar, because even if you have to ride on the government scheme, social security, or whether you have to go for a wet port or maybe the dry port, or whether we have to go for the railway siding or any space project as well. So we have to be, I believe, with the digital side on the capacity and capability. Let me share with you, for all the industries, yes, the country is well poised. So there is no dearth of the capacity, capability, and I think we do have all capabilities. Only thing is to firm up the chain. I think we should join the ends which are in bits and pieces, and the government policies. Even now 13% is the capital expenditure from the government side. So it itself shows that it is going to be a one. Actually question also came in between, so that it paused me for a seconds, that there are on the piles of stress assets the banks are sitting. But I do not as such agree on that, because if we see the way in which the banks have evolved pro-COVID, it was one of the pandemic side. And even the bank, if we see the provision coverage ratio, I would not take from the Bank of Maharashtra, we are 94, but if we take the industry as well, so almost above 90 we are there. If we take even the impaired assets, which is coming down heavily, and the economy has sustained, let us also appreciate. It is not a small matter. We can think of all the enablers, we can think of all the capacities, but let us understand, but 2 years, the economy has been the standstill. And during that time, the pumping of the funds from the government side, the packages, which has helped economy to rebound back. And probably, if we speak to the core of the heart, because in various economies, I believe, the pumping of the money to save the country, save the economy, save the citizen of the country from the COVID has also led to the inflation. So certainly it was a very natural outcome. that inflation which has come. So probably the Reserve Bank and the other, the government and the agencies are taking due care, and probably we will be are in a, I think, the best part to go forward. With this, I would like to conclude and give way to Dr. Narendra sir and the other participants. Just I thought over my state of the heart, what could be a lender's perspective on the issue after listening to Shailesh Bhai and Panigraji. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ashish. That bank will have a big role if we have to take to 25 trillion economy, because current our what you call contribution to GDP is hardly around 60%, and in the international it is maybe 130% also. So we have a long way, but currently 12% credit growth has picked up, and as he rightly said, the banking sector, finance sector is totally today ready because of the quite capital adequacy and also the provision coverage, and as Ashok Pradhan has mentioned, the MSME and all that, once the forbearance goes, can they survive? I am sure that the banks will give the extent. And one important thing is the equity scheme, which are there by the government for the MSME, the fund of funds. That should be extended more to the MSME rather than the debt, because they are totally now, the leverage of debt has increased. So with this, now I go to our Charan Singh, our who has been in the regulator, as well as he was the non-executive chairman of Punjab and Sindh Bank, and he has a very good global and domestic experience. So Charan Singh Saab.
First of all, Dr. Narendra, I must thank you for giving me this opportunity of sharing my thoughts. As I have been listening, there are luminaries that you have invited, and the three speakers who have spoken before me are extremely articulate and very good analysis that they presented. So I'm thankful to you for organizing this, having such speakers on the panel, and also giving me an opportunity to interact. Now, when I was reading through the material that you sent, I thought I'll organize my thoughts according to the points that you mentioned, and I'll focus around financial sector and the banking sector in the 10 minutes that you have allocated to me. Which are the major reforms that took place in the last 50 years? I would, as a banker, say bank nationalization was very, very important. And though bank nationalization spoke about the social sector, social responsibility, and did a great job, but over the years, right from 1955, when State Bank of India was nationalized, or 1969, when other commercial banks were nationalized, or 1980, till nearly 2012, we found that the banking penetration is really low, not only in urban areas, but even in rural areas. And that is when the Prime Minister starts the Jan Dhan Yojana. And that Jan Dhan Yojana, in a way, there's a revolution into the banking sector. So I think that's very important development that took place. Now, I have been in the Reserve Bank for many years, and I can tell you in 1991, when we did the financial sector reforms, one of the major reforms we did is we looked at the government securities market, and we brought in the auction system and computerization. I think in the last 50 years, that will be a landmark development initiative that has taken place. When you look at the fiscal sector, I'm really proud to say that I was associated with the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act. Now that means the fiscal discipline was brought in, and that is so very important. And when we started the reforms in 1991, we found that there was automatic monetization of deficit taking place. And now, once we did the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act, through various pacts before that, we stopped the automatic monetization. To that extent, the monetary policy got lots of independence. If we look at the external sector, I think the idea of building foreign exchange reserves, because 1991 had hit us under the belt because our foreign exchange reserves had depleted to just 2 weeks of import cover. And that was extremely, extremely worrisome. And then set in the high level committee on balance of payments with Dr. C. Rangarajan as the chairman and Dr. Y.V. Reddy as the secretary. And when they said that we need to have a solid import cover. On the other hand, the capital account convertibility, which was being considered very fashionable and also forced down by the IMF on India, I really like the policymakers in India who resisted it tooth and nail and didn't let it happen. And that is where Deputy Governor from the Reserve Bank, Mr. S.S. Tarapur, he will be a hero in the minds of policymakers in our country, how he resisted it and how he held it back twice. As far as monetary policy is concerned, I think we had minted a multiple indicator approach after the Asian crisis. And that was minted by none else but Dr. Bimil Jalan. And I still think that was better than inflation targeting, which of course is the current regime and got implemented when Dr. Raghuram Rajan took over as the governor. Now, this is the last 50 years from the financial sector, if I have to think through. Now, when it comes to challenges and opportunities in the current Indian economy, I would say currently, and you mentioned it in your presentation too, we are the fastest growing economy on the planet. And that's not easy, that's not an easy status because it has very, very important implications. And this status of being the fastest growing economy cannot be attained by casual policy approach. We are the fastest because we deserve it and because the last 8 years have shown that we can take policy initiatives against all odds. That is why we are. And that is also important that despite the global slowdown that has happened now, we have attained record breaking exports from our country. Now, I think that again speaks volumes about the efficiency of policy making and the timely intervention despite the pandemic like COVID. Now, one thing which I say, this should be treated like an opportunity when the global slowdown is there. And we all know the number of foreign companies operating in China. We know what has happened to the global supply chain. And this is the time, I think, when India can grab this as an opportunity and provide them alternatives that in the virgin areas of Northeast, we are able to provide exactly what China provides to global industries to entice them and set up office. I think we can use it as an opportunity, and our ambassadors and our high commissions in foreign countries can play a very crucial role over there. Now, when it comes to future growth and drivers of growth, I think we have discovered a few during the pandemic. One, of course, is the pharmacy and pharmaceutical products. Means I think it will go in the history of, it's a record-breaking thing, it will go in the history of world that India, touted as a poor country or the weak country, was able to produce vaccines and then vaccinate its population, which is nearly 16% of the world population, at a pace which many advanced countries couldn't do it. So therefore, I think we have to encash that pharmacy and pharmaceutical products that we have established our lead now. Automobiles is another place because we have started experimenting with, and our Prime Minister has been talking about climate concerns as well as the carbon footprint. So Indian automobile industry is doing very well. And I think that's another one which will be a potential area of growth and driver for growth. Construction is the third one, which I would say India has a great potential, great need. And I think construction can be revolutionized if Indian construction system, where people like Laurie Baker architects in Kerala came out with housing material, which is very climatic friendly. And I think that is where we will find we need per capita income is rising. We need more houses, and construction will be the driving industry in my mind. Now, when it comes to sectoral growth, I have a few in my mind. I think the banking sector needs long-term reforms. We had the Narsum Committee report 1 and 2, and after that we don't have any. But the dynamic changes that are taking place in India and abroad, especially after 2008 and after COVID, we all know how the world has really got flattened. What will be the role of banking industry in India, and what will be the role of non-banking finance companies, we need to determine. So I think long-term reforms are needed, wherein the role of commercial banks, infrastructure bank is coming up, role of infrastructure bank, small banks, payment banks, non-banking finance companies, and cooperative banks should be clearly delineated. I think the way forward, I mentioned in the last 50 years when we needed it, nationalization of banks was a very important step. I think time has come to revisit it, and now time has come to even start privatizing the commercial banks. I think the next 50, 25 years, we would see more of it happen. And I would say asset monetization that the government conceived about, that should be also extended to the banking industry. In the next few years, I think digitization will play a very important role, not only in the economy. We all know about the central bank digital currency, which we are talking about. I'm sure it's going to come because it's going to tap the blockchain technology, which is a very modern way of ledger keeping. I'm sure that's going to happen. But when I think about digitization, I also think of telemedicine and tele-education. Now, once we do telemedicine and tele-education, then you know that labor is taken care of. They get skilled very fast, at least the literacy rises. And if they're healthy, then of course, they're very productive. The last 2 points which I want to mention is, the last is, of course, the global experience shows that with growth, income inequalities do rise. So I think the government and policymakers will have to be alert how to ensure that income inequalities do not rise too rapidly, or at least in different cohorts, income distribution is reasonably well. Otherwise, when there are too sharp income inequalities, it can lead to social problems. The last point I want to make, and I see I have a minute more, is about sustainability. Everybody has been talking about sustainability, but I would like to attract the attention of the audience towards the speech which the Prime Minister made 2 weeks ago. I think on the Environment Day. That is very, very important. I've been talking about it for nearly 3 years now. I'm saying that Indian model of sustainability of growth has to be followed. An Indian model of sustainability of growth is very simple. You respect the elements. You treat air as your guru, you treat earth as your mother, and you treat water as your father. And not only that, you not only think of humans on the planet, you even think of plants, you think of animals, and you think of birds. In the Indian 5,000 year of civilization, when we were the richest on the planet for 3,000 years, we were very clear. We would even worship the plants. We would even, Tulsi would be at every home. People would be worshipped. People tree would be worshipped. There is a cow whom we treat as a mother. There are animals whom we treat as gods. Birds as the vehicle of the gods. So the Indian sustainability model is something which the world need to ingrain and think about, where we don't think of human race as single and isolated, where we integrate the complete universe in which we live, we give them respect, and we also nourish them, nurture them, and take care of them. I think India's time has started now. COVID has flattened the world and made the people rethink. And I think India should grab this opportunity and talk to the world about its sustainable model. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, sir, Charan Singh Sab, that being very close in the RBI policy making and all, you have clearly brought in the 50 years how the regulator has brought in the FRBM Act itself is one of the very important. And of course, recently inflation targeting. And one area now that sometime whether the India can be a full-fledged capital convertibility, that is the one area which has to be seen. And even though today we have around less than 600 billion US dollars reserves, are we to reach just like $3 trillion as that of China by 2047? But reserves also in during the other time, it has a cost for that. But in terms of volatility, it helps. Now, and of course, sector-wise and all you have covered and given a very good account of the banking sector and other financial sector, how they can contribute in our journey up to 2047. And on the area of market and all that matter, we have to hear Mr. Anant Narayan, as well as he has a social sector also, he is a very nearer to him. So let us hear Mr. Anant Narayan. Anant Narayan?
Yes, sir. Thank you
Yeah.
very much for this opportunity. Really appreciate this. Again, I commend you on the quality of speakers that you've put together. All the 4 speakers who spoke before me, absolutely fascinating to hear their views. Sir, you prefaced your comment by saying, I will speak about markets. I'm reminded of a joke which I heard from Mr. B. Sriram of SBI. So apparently he was not very good at Hindi and he had to pass the Hindi exam. And he was told that the essay which will come in the exam will be about a football match. So he prepared for the football match. Unfortunately, when we went to the examination, the question paper was about man's journey to the moon. So what he wrote was 22 people sat on a rocket, went to the moon and played a football match there and then described the football match. So I'm going to do the same. You've asked me about markets. I have not prepared about markets, but I'm going to say that what I will say will hopefully cover markets as well in the long run. First off, sir, on the question of how India has done and how it will do, I think all of us, not just here, but even outside the country, will agree that India has done a great job and India is the country of the future. Because of my association with Observatory Group, sir, which is a global think tank, a small niche global think tank, I speak to plenty of global investors. I can tell you the goodwill towards India is tremendous at this point in time. It is for us to actually milk it, but otherwise the goodwill is there. Why is that goodwill there? Sir, in 30 years, our per capita income has grown from $300 to over $2,000. That is a 6% compounded annual growth rate over the last 30 years. Now, depending upon which political side you belong to, we've had terrible governments, we've had fantastic governments, we've had indifferent governments. Through all of this, we have managed to grow at 6% consistently in dollar terms. I have no doubt we will at least grow by 6% in dollar terms per capita over the next 30 years also. Hopefully, God willing, it will be higher than that also. We've also done a great job in terms of physical infrastructure. We've done a great job in terms of digital infrastructure. I would argue that our digital infrastructure already is better than many countries in the Western world. I'm sometimes ashamed that, Western world still asks for checks and pieces of paper, which we've all forgotten about in India right now. Finally, sir, our people are good. Median age of 28 and 29 years old, very aspirational, very socially strong. We are hardworking. I have no doubt that we have entrepreneurs and hardworking people to create value. So our success is going to happen, but there are opportunities. Unfortunately, we always come out with the feeling that our opportunity and our potential is here, and we end up delivering somewhere here. So the question is, what is it that has been missing? I want to specifically spend some time, sir, on employment, which I think is really the core issue for everything, whether it is inflation, whether it is growth, whether it is current account deficit, whether it is fiscal deficit, whether it is anything that you can think of, finally comes down to jobs and output. Now, unfortunately, in this country, despite having, we have 110 crore people who are 15 years and older. Potentially, many of them can work. If there is one metric which is super important, it is employment and number of jobs. Unfortunately, we don't have very reliable, timely measurements of jobs. We have timely measurement for CPI, we have measurement for GDP, but jobs is always a questionable issue. But let me give you some statistics, sir. The ILO, the International Labour Organization, actually measures something called worker to population ratio. That ratio was for India about 55% of people above the age of 15 as of 1991. Till 2005, it was about 55% as measured by ILO. From 2005 onwards, that has been steadily coming down. As of 2021, ILO says it is at 43%. If you look at any comparable country, sir, if you look at Vietnam, Bangladesh, China, Brazil, the numbers range between 55% and 75%. 43% for India is a shockingly low number. For women, worker participation rate, as per ILO statistics, is 20%. Okay. Now there is controversy around that, but nevertheless, that is a number. Okay. Let's go to Indian data now. Let's keep aside ILO data. Now, unfortunately, as I said, we don't have very good data, but I'm going to take a look at two data. One is CMIE data, and the other is something called PLFS, the Periodic Labor Force Survey, which comes out from the NSS. Okay. So CMIE data suggests that over the last 6 to 7 years, our total workforce has been static at just 40 crores. Okay. Now that 40 crores also is composed of about 15 crores in agriculture and 25 crores in manufacturing and services. That manufacturing and services has been 25 crores to 26 crores over the last 6 years, almost static. Of course, it came down during COVID. It's come back to about 26 crores. Now, every month, the number of people who are above 15 years of age goes up by about 20 lakhs every month. Okay, so every month we should be creating new jobs. Instead, our jobs have been static. And 40 crores on a base of 110 crores is a very, very low number. Now, a lot of people criticize CMIE data. They say that, no, some people criticize and say it underestimates employment. Some people say it overestimates employment, by the way. There is criticism on both sides. So let's look at what PLFS says. PLFS is our official numbers, okay? Very broadly, PLFS says our employment is 50 crores, not 40 crores. So that suggests that maybe CMIE is wrong and, PLFS is better. But there are some issues. PLFS counts if you're actually a helper in household enterprises and not getting paid. That is counted as employed in PLFS. So all women workers who help even for 1 hour a week, if they help in agriculture or in the husband's business in the rural areas, they're counted as employed. Okay. Likewise, there is something called current weekly status in PLFS, which says over the last 1 week, if somebody has worked even for 1 hour, that person is counted as employed. Okay. Now, if I adjust for these two things, PLFS and CMIE data almost match to the T. Okay. The two almost coincide. Okay. So the point is, even if you argue about the nitty-gritty of the numbers, there can be very little doubt that there is massive underemployment in this country, particularly amongst our women folk. If you go by CMIE data, by the way, that shows women participation at below 10%. That number is below numbers for Middle Eastern Arabic countries. Okay, it is a shameful statistic. Okay, now why we sometimes don't like this data is because we don't observe that amongst us in the formal sectors. If you look at formal sectors, there is, in fact, we see lack of skilled labor. Compensations are going up. It is impossible to hire good talent in good companies. So in the sliver of the organized sector, which you can argue 15-20% of the population, things are looking very, very tight. In fact, employees are doing extremely well there. But it is the bottom half of the economy which is kind of struggling at this point in time. Now, the implications of this, I think, are very, very clear. Today, sir, last year, our trade deficit with China was $73 billion. You know what all we imported from them? We imported fertilizers, electronics, chemicals, plastics, a whole bunch of manufactured items. Today, there's an AC running on top of me. 50% of that AC is made of parts imported from other countries. Okay, so it's not just petrol and gold that we import. We also import a lot of manufactured items. We've essentially missed the manufacturing bus, and that has in fact cost us jobs. Okay, to that extent, when people say, just put money in the hands of people through Narega or whatever, and that will create demand, that will create supply. I question that, because when you put money in the hands of people without creating output, all you're doing is stoking inflation. All you're doing is pushing up imports. And all you're doing is exporting jobs to somebody else. And then that creates a current account deficit, that creates a fiscal deficit, and so on and so forth. So it's creating issues on multiple fronts, including inflation. Because if you're not creating enough output and you create demand, you will create inflation. Now, why is it that we have struggled so much to create jobs? And this is not one government, two governments. This is, as I said, since 2005, we have struggled to create jobs. That's what the data suggests. Why is it that? If you speak to people in the industry, and in my institute, we have family managed businesses who run industries, small scale, large scale, all of those kinds. We speak to them and get the feedback. Multiple reasons. Ease of doing investments in manufacturing in India is not being good. That's the brutal truth. That's one of the reasons why we missed the manufacturing bus. I have a lot of students, sir, in my SPJMR MBA institute. They all want to become, fintechs, and they want to have startups, and they do want to become a unicorn very soon, etc. Almost nobody, I can't think of a single person who says, I will start a manufacturing unit and employ 100 people. That is simply not there in the radar for anybody. Okay. Why is that the case? Ease of doing business, very difficult. And I'll give you simple examples. Land acquisition, if you want to set up a large factory in this country. Okay. We have something called the LARR of 2013, which is the Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation and Resettlement Act. Okay. Dr. Arvind Panagaria, who was earlier vice chairman of the Niti Aayog, he mentions that if you go by those laws, it will take, if you're lucky, it will take 5 years for you to acquire land of decent size to set up a decent manufacturing facility. Okay. We have 4.5 crore outstanding cases in India courts. Our Chief Justice of India in a speech, he mentioned that even if you assume that no fresh cases are added ever, it will take 350 years to clear this backlog. Many of these court cases pertain to land acquisition issues. Okay, so land acquisition is one area. There are other issues about labor. There are other issues about contract enforcement, environmental clearances, multiple other things. I don't want to get into that. But the government, to be fair, is trying to address these issues. What is it that the government is trying to do? One, it is investing a lot on infrastructure. If you look at the capital expenditure of the central government, it has gone up substantially over the last 2 years as a percentage of the total expenditure. And that's going towards roads, that's going towards railway. So infrastructure investments is happening. Second, we are trying to improve ease of doing business. So labor laws have been changed. They've not been notified, but they've at least the acts have been changed. The tax rates were brought down in September 2019. Other things are being done to try and improve ease of doing business. Third, there is a controversial issue about privatization. I personally am in favor of it. I think privatization will improve efficiency, but again, they're trying to do that. And fourth, they have things like production-linked incentives, right? Which is to try and bring in, Dr. Charan Singh mentioned, that it's an opportunity for India with China +1, etc. I completely agree. Dr. Anant Nageshwar, our chief economic advisor, was asked, how is India, doing right now with this China +1, etc. He gave a very candid answer. He said, China is doing all the work for us. It is becoming such a terrible place with its issues around COVID, with its fights with the West on various issues. Naturally, companies are coming towards people like India, and especially India, saying, what can I do with India, right? So opportunity is there. Government is trying, but the devil is in the execution. It's nice to give these broad plans. It's a lot more difficult to see them through to execution. So what would I suggest going forward? I would suggest 3 things, sir. First is, ease of doing business is not one thing. If you're looking for give me 3 ideas that I can do right now, which can change the ease of doing business, it's not there. That doesn't exist. But a simple thing which Niti Aayog, by the way, has planned, including digitization of land records, including giving a guarantee of ownership. The moment you register a land, there should be some validity and guarantee about that ownership of that land. If I have bought a land which has been registered in somebody's name and I go through the registration process, I cannot face litigation from somebody from 3 generations ago saying, oh, the land belongs to me. I'll come back and I want to redo that. So I think land laws, improving that is one big thing. The other thing on ease of doing business, when I meet my colleagues from ASEAN countries or from China, etc., what they say is just look at what the provinces of China did. Any ASEAN country, whether it's Vietnam, whether it's Malaysia, what they did. It's a combination of local government, state government, central government, one single window across all of them. You can't have New Delhi running a PLI scheme and doing it all centrally. It has to be done at the local level. China did not become China because of Beijing running the whole show. It was the local 50 mayors in 50 provinces who actually made sure that the FDI came in. So that's one big thing, sir. The second big thing, if you ask me, education, healthcare, sanitation. This is an investment. All the speakers have spoken about it. This is an investment which is absolutely required. Even if we have to eat grass, we have to ensure our children get good education, that they get good healthcare, that they get good sanitation. Some of the statistics from the National Health and Family Survey are shocking. When we see, stunting of 35% of the children 0 to 5 years, when we see wasting of 18%, these are shocking statistics. It's a much improved from where it was in the past, but these are shocking statistics. If a child does not get enough nutrition in the ages of 0 to 5, he or she, the brain will not develop. You cannot expect that person to become a bright person and contribute for himself, herself, or the country. you need that basic investment to go through. Again, the governments are doing a lot, both state and central, but a lot more needs to be done in a mission mode for the next 10, 15 years to ensure education, healthcare, sanitation, nutrition, especially for our children. The final thing I would leave with, sir, we need centers of excellence. China is going far ahead in terms of machine learning, artificial learning, all those things. We have centers of excellence, IITs and AI, AIMS, etc. But things like R&D, things like investments into the frontline research is absolutely required. You need to attract the best of talent to come there. We've done a great job with things like National Payments and Corporation of India, with CCIL, etc., to build a digital infrastructure. We need similar kind of investments to be done in areas like ESG, in areas like artificial intelligence, as centers of excellence where you attract the best of talent and retain them for several years and pour money into their R&D. These three things, sir: ease of doing investments in education, and investments in centers of excellence. If we get even 50% right, I think instead of 6% growth over the next 30 years, we can probably achieve 10, 15, 12, multiple high double-digit % growth. Last thing I'll leave with, sir, you asked about markets. As I said, I'll finish the football match and the moon travel. Look, it's like this. I think when people ask about it, most of the time, people like me we are armchair professors, we have nothing better to. We will talk about monetary policy, we will talk about MPC, we will talk about fiscal policy. I sometimes ask my students a simple question. Can you tell me what is the monetary policy framework of China? Or what is the fiscal policy of China? And the reality is even trained economists don't know the answer. Okay, by the way, monetary policy in China is for stability of the yuan, not for inflation. Okay, but that's a long story. The point is, China did not become China because they had excellent monetary policy or they had excellent fiscal policy. They became China because they created jobs and output. They fudge every single data. Don't believe a single data that comes out. But one thing they did, they created jobs and output. They became the manufacturing capital of the world. It's a similar story for us, sir. If we create jobs and output, and if we invest in our people, everything else, our fiscal policy, our exchange rate, our inflation, our growth, everything else will fall in place. It's the real economy that actually matters. I'll stop here, sir, and hand the mic back to you. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Very excellent address by Anand. And I know he's always passionate about providing employment and employability and full productiveness of our people, and particularly women's sector. And that has got a direct bearing to GDP. And otherwise, quite a lot of them, as he said, even a 1 hour of work treated as a job, but it is not a full-fledged. So that is a very important. And other side, of course, he has a very clear opinion about how the China has achieved all this job and output and the growth with the ease of doing business, single clearance, both the states and central level, and a lot of labor reforms and other things should come. And the very social sector, like, how did we find during COVID? So the health, education, and sanitation, these are very much needed even for the climate action or sustainability and sustainable development goals. So I think, and center of excellence. So thank you, Mr. Ananthan. Now I will come back to you a little later if we have some time. Now we have Dr. Professor M.M. Goyal. As I clearly mentioned, he is the founder of Neodynamics and a very well-learned person. So apart from talking on the opportunity, all that, he may also touch upon education sector. Dr. Goyal Sahab.
Thank you, Dr. Narendra, for providing me this wonderful opportunity. I place on record appreciation to wonderful event. To start with, let me tell you, to move on the ladder from Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav in 2022 to Swarnim Bharat in 2047 with morality, opulence, victory, and empowerment, believe that Lord Krishna as God and Arjuna as soul is with us. And that is called Ek Shloki Gita, Yatra Yogeshwar Krishna, Yatra Partharu Dhanurdhar, Tatra Si Vijyo Bhuturdita Netramitramam. Meaning thereby, last shloka spoken by Sanjaya on the relevance of Gita in 700 shlokas and 18 chapters, which is most relevant to enter into Swarnim Bharat in 2047. To develop my thoughts in a very systematic manner, let me tell you that we have to understand the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges, which has already been explained by 5 speakers earlier. But we have to understand the socio-economic crisis faced today in Indian economy at the rate of 75 towards 100 in 2047. For smooth journey from Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav to Swarnim Bharat, we need commitment and honesty of the stakeholders, including consumers, producers, distributors, and traders, and above all, politicians in power and opposition. For the sustainable society, which I call S is equal to A minus 1, we have to understand the adage, necessity is the mother of invention, rightly explains the importance of needs and economics to be called needonomics, economics of needs. There is no dearth of literature on Indian economic thought relevant to justify needonomics given by Maharaja Agrasen, Bhagavad Gita, Mahatma Gandhi, J.K. Mehta, what less. For journey from Amrit Mahotsav to Swarnim Bharat in 2047, we have to understand the power of needonomics, economics of needs, with needo consumption as a stress-free state with no to greed, which cause all the ills, including terrorism, corruption, discrimination, and discontent. Needonomics is based on Gita and used in the logo of LIC of India, Yogam Kshemam Bahamyam. Your welfare is our responsibility. It believes in common sense approach, which is ethical, non-violent, and spiritual in nature. Let us understand this needonomics, economics of needs, which is practically flowing from Bhagavad Gita, shloka number 22 of chapter 9, where from we can have spiritually guided materialism strategy, wherein Lord Krishna says, Anyanya chintanto mayojana priyupaste tesham nityabhyuktanam yogam kshemam bahamyam, meaning thereby you just create a need. Lord Krishna has promised to fulfill that need and to take care what you have. We have to do what from this movement from 2022 to 2047 in Swarnim Bharat, what we have to do, what we have not to do, why we have to do, why we have not to do, when we have to do, where we have not to do, for whom. This question should ponder over mind of all the stakeholders, including the politicians in power and the policy makers, and we have to work without worries for achieving the objectives of the Swarnim Bharat. To my mind, as I was conceptualizing society, all minus I is society, I myself is not society, around me is society. And economics, in needonomics, we talk of 4 actors: consumers, producers, distributors, and traders. Let me honestly tell you that Narendra will agree with me that there was a time when we were the students, we were told that producer is a hero, but gone are the days. Today, consumer is the hero. Whatever we have to do it for the sake of consumer. And let me tell you, demand, although is coming to the level of post-COVID era, but still there is no demand in the market. Economy is suffering from recession from the demand side point of view. Although these heroes are interested in goods and services, which is supply side, which is already full of market. And therein the role of villains, as in Bollywood, the story is not complete with the villains in who are creating problems of a hero to meet the heroine. In that sense, all those who provide goods and services, including the policymakers, distributors, and traders, they are villains, and we have to take care of them, how to get rid of them. To my mind, the strength is my beloved Bharat. Bharat means knowledge, Bharat means seeker. Bharat is a knowledge seeker economy from the very beginning, and that is why it enjoys the peaceful status, in spite of the fact in many of the economic indicators we stand nowhere. Although Bharat is the only country in India called independent nation declared in August, sadly in English dictionaries, but it is our duty to understand Swarnim Bharat as independent, non-violent democracy with integrity and amity and a culture of civilization. Though our second one is concerned, although Mr. Pandey has already told to you that youth is the demographic dividend, but I'm afraid that it is going to become disaster if we are not able to provide them the employment opportunities. Particularly, most of the people today, whosoever are employed, they are also underemployed. Let me honestly tell you, even in academics, we pay very little, meager amount in private universities to the PhDs as assistant professor, associate professors, and professors. So I'm afraid of the problem of underemployment more than the unemployment in my country. So for agricultural base identified as a trade potential economy by Britishers needs to be understood by all the stakeholders. Let me honestly tell you, earlier speaker was telling to me that basically land acquisition is an issue. Had the land acquisition could have taken place for agriculture only, the story of development could have been entirely different. Britishers identified this potential because they introduced the concept of cash crops, commercialization of agriculture. And Ambedkar was also of the view that let us go in for nationalization of agriculture. If the land acquisition could have taken place for agriculture, the story of development could have been entirely different. In my beloved country, non-economic fundamentals are very strong with Indian economic thought. Chanakya's Arthashastra, who needs to be recognized as father of economics instead of Adam Smith. Ambedkar's economic framework is relevant even to take care of all kind of fiscal crisis in the global economies as well as the Indian economy. He was talking of faithfulness to the intentions of the will of people, wisdom to be used from all sectors of the society, and economy in execution. Gandhian economic thought is also relevant. Wage good strategy by Brahmanand and Vakil, and above all, Nidonomics, which practically flows from Bhagavad Gita in terms of spiritually guided materialism strategy. We have to confine to needs and no to greed, which is capable to solve the problems. So for the weaknesses are concerned, in my beloved country, let me honestly tell you, we are still suffering from foreign phobia. Many of the scholars talk of China. Many of the people talk about foreign universities, centers of excellence. In National Education Policy 2020, when we talk about the government of India has room for 100 foreign universities to open their shops. Let me say that it is a confession that we are weak. Yes, we are weak. Even if we are weak, we can become unique in solving many of the problems of the Indian economy. So for data is concerned, let me honestly tell you, my friend was talking about CMI data, Government of India data, RBI data in many of the socio-economic factors, including population. We don't have data. The population census, which was to be conducted in 2021, is still to be conducted in 2023. We have not prepared so far. So for data of inflation is concerned, my dear friend, Dr. Narendraji, you will agree with me. The data comes every month, but sadly, it is based on wrong methodology, point basis method, meaning thereby we are calculating annual rate of inflation monthly, which is not reliable, which is based on a wrong methodology. How we can go in for formulating the monetary policy and fiscal policy to go in for inflation targeting, which is based on wrong data. Unemployment, underemployment, and poverty data is also questionable, which I don't agree with. Infrastructure is necessary but not sufficient. My friend was telling to us that digital infrastructure has been created, but basic infrastructure in terms of roads, electricity, internet is not there. You are just talking of Mumbai, sir. You go to small villages where we talk of digital India, where there's no electricity, no internet connectivity. Even in a city like Kurukshetra, we face this problem every day. Coefficient of distrust is very high. My dear friends, let me tell you, this is the cause of causes in all the aspects of the performance of Indian economy, in the primary sector, secondary sector, and tertiary sector. And we go in for post-mortem approach. My dear friends, we are not going for progressive approach. We are preparing ourselves. We are ready with vision India 2047, but we simply go in for post-mortem approach when we fail somewhere. Consumption investment paradox is also one of the important weaknesses in my beloved country, and lack of entrepreneurship. My friend was telling that many of the startups have converted into unicorn, but still we are not able to create entrepreneurship even at the micro, small, medium enterprises level, which is required to the desirable level of China if we have to create jobs and output in our economy. So far opportunities are concerned, in my beloved country, I call Bharat as India's as a place of opportunities with common sense approach of needonomics, economics of need, which is ethical, non-violent, spiritual, and brings discipline among consumers, producers, distributors, and traders with altruism. NEP 2020 ensures NEDO education based on values for attracting students from abroad to gain credibility. To my mind, Atmanirbharta is being talked about by our beloved Prime Minister, which is simply self-sufficiency. Although he has changed his tone and tenor, now he says from local to global, but for that we have to go in for self-reliance. Self-reliance means open economy, and we have to go in for accepting globalization as internationalization of Indianization with potential in export of services. I always say that don't talk of be vocal for local, but talk of localization. Think globally, act locally. That can solve many of the problems. And the time has come, we have to go in for international marketing of Indian values. My dear friends, so far challenges are concerned. Every change is a challenge. We have to change our looks, we have to change our actions, we have to change our words to make it law of the land. I call it NIDO legislation, which are obsolete and can have to be changed for many of the things, even the acts which are not being implemented properly. NIDO education of NIDOnomics. Dr. Narendra, let me honestly tell you, the time has come when we have to enter into 2047 for Swarnim Bharat. Every stakeholders of the economy, consumer, producer, distributor, and trader, and the policymakers must be educated of NIDOnomics, economics of needs, which is ethical, non-violent, spiritual in nature. We have to solve this free rider problem. My friend, Dr. Narendra, let me tell you, the entire country is suffering from free rider problem. Why free electricity, free water? Why can't we introduce user charges and restructure the fee with attaching it to consumer price index, which can solve many of the problems? My country also suffers from holiday culture, which needs to be converted into holiday culture. Work culture can be ensured by stopping this holiday culture. Although holiday culture can be leading to the tourism sector, which has the highest employment multiplier. But sorry to say that even the 5 days week could not be worked out for creating holiday culture. Neither it can create save the petrol, nor it can create the leisure culture and holiday culture in my country. There is a widening generation gap. The gap between generations is increasing instead of reducing. Old values are changing. New values have not yet emerged. Bollywood is saying something else, and national education policy talks of many things ethical, which is not possible to reduce the generation gap. There is insensitivity of the people for the gender issues, terrorism, corruption, all kinds of crimes, discontent, deprivation, discrimination caused by greedonomics. Let me tell you, it is only by greed that we are creating all these problems of terrorism, corruption, and all that. I have come out with the latest prescription as a researcher. People, consumers, producer, distributor, and traders must know the realities before COVID. I call it BC. Earlier, we were talking about before Christ, during COVID, and after COVID. This research analysis should be done by the researchers in case we are genuinely interested to solve the problems of Indian economy and to enter into the Swarnim Bharat in 2047. And merely celebrating 2022 as Amrit Mahotsav cannot solve the problem of independence. We have to become economically independent. To improve the ranking from 135th in the Global Peace Index 2022 is to adopt NIDOnomics. My friend was telling to us about the data which is there for ease of doing business, which is for 63rd rank in terms, which used to be 142nd in 2041. It's a matter of consolation, but it is not complete. We have to become Vishguru by learning Gurudom of the self as a soul with AAA, alertness, awareness, and awakening with Vivek. We have to face Chakravyuh challenges. Charan Singh ji was telling to us about the loan scheme. Let me honestly tell you, the challenges, Chakravyuh challenges of Cobra effect. The loan has proved to be Cobra in my beloved country, which have to address the socio-economic problems of the people, small people and the big people as well. And we have to adopt NIDOnomics with NAW approach of marketing. Let me tell you, sir, market is suffering from recession. There is no buyer. People don't have purchasing power. We have to create the need of the product. After creating the need, we have to make them affordable and price it worth of it. That international marketing is required to be adopted, and it is also relevant to go in for NIDO banking, sir. Let me tell you, bad bank has come into operation, but still we have to make it just and sustainable society.
So,
Take this approach.
गोयल
Work
साहब थोड़ा
without worries.
गोयल साहब थोड़ा स्पीड अप करिए.
Let me complete it. I'm just
Yeah.
completing.
Yeah.
To work without worries for Swarnim Bharat, we need real education. Nido education, I call proper, productive, and practical use of hands, head, and heart. We have to reduce all the deficits, fiscal, revenue, budget, primary trade, and above all, trust can be addressed by reducing the coefficient of distrust. Say no to freedom problem, requiring implementation of the user pay principle with self-consciousness. We need faith in the capabilities and capacities with disciplined lifestyle by understanding the power of worship with devotion. Address illness in the behavior of all the stakeholders in the economy, including consumers, producers, distributors, and traders. Nido data and performance indicators call for strengthening the data infrastructure. Let us become street smart and simple to enter into Swarnim Bharat. Let me tell you, you know smart city, you know smartphone, but the time has come when all the stakeholders of the economy need to become street smart. Street smart is a person who knows the environment, who knows the COVID era, who knows the lockdowns, and therefore we need to become transparent, responsive, action-oriented, moral, and simple. Mahatma Gandhi has been talking of simple living and high thinking, but I always say simple living and no thinking. No thinking does not mean that we should not think. We should think of those things which are in our control, and we should not think those things which are not in our control. And that is the message of Bhagavad Gita, my guru. We have to go in for increasing our emotional quotient. We have to increase our love and self-attitude. We have to create health culture. We have to change our mindset. Intuition is clear that India is going to emerge as a world leader on the basis of spiritual strength. And for that, we have to adopt Gita-based needonomics, economics of need. That is the only practical solution with which we can solve almost all the prevailing problems in 2022, and we can smoothly enter into 2047. Implications of needonomics is we have to create the capacity in the economy. We have to increase the domestic saving rate. We have to reduce the dependence on borrowing and FDI, altruism, basic needs, commitment for the society, life insurance, reduce risk and uncertainty. All these are possible by adopting needonomics and becoming street smart and simple. That is my take on moving from 2022 to 2047. Thank you very much, Dr. Narendra.
Thank you, Professor M.M. Goel Sab, and really so much committed, and you have this very firm belief in the needonomics, not the greedonomics, and very clearly analyze the SWOT analysis from the historical and the prospective futuristically, and given a very good account where the bottom of the pyramid could get all the benefit. That is where we are talking about growth with equity. Now with this, I'm sorry for other speakers that they have to be wait for quite a long time, but we have a very learned and knowledgeable and very experienced and market related and very active in the finance, risk management, and the infrastructure, R. Govindan. So can I have the address by R. Govindan Sab? Yes, sir. Correct.
Yeah.
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 Yes, sir.
Good evening, everybody. I think I will keep it a bit short and simple. I think a lot of discussions have happened. I think we have moved a long way from last 500-600 years to where we have come post-independence, from green revolution, white revolution, 3% GDP growth. Then we've gone through a liberalization era and a globalization era, and a lot of reforms over the last 7-8 years, 10-year period. So some of the key things is telecom policy, which happened earlier. It's important to know how we got people from outside India, Sam Pitroda, how it changed the whole setup here. Some of the infrastructure-led areas on global quadrilateral and inflation targeting, Jandan accounts. A lot of interesting things have happened. It's really pushed it a lot forward ahead. Where I feel some difference, I think like some of the good things you have done in the last 50-70 years is life expectancy from 50 years has become 70. Literacy rates have moved from 32 to 77. China is at 97%. We are at 77. We got some ways to go. If you put the crux of the whole thing, I think last 200-300 years, we have not been a part of any innovation. We have not been a part of industrial revolution, right? Now, this sustainable ESG framework which has come, that's going to give a great opportunity for us to move significantly forward. Uh, so it is a time for India to grow is now, right? But you need some preconditions for it. One of the things which you have not done well at all, and we have to do significantly, is on R&D, right? R&D, innovation, education, they're all very important things for you, for any economy to grow. It has to be always a world has grown on the basis of knowledge only. It is not grown just like that. It's primarily the knowledge and ensuring many parts of the world become your customer. That's the way the world has grown. Uh, Education has been a very, like if you look at Indian education, hardly 2.5-3% of GDP is being spent. If you look at most of the other countries, they are in 6-7. We are spending very low on education. This is one part of the problem. R&D is another area where India spends just about 0.6% of GDP. Most of the countries are in 3, 4, 5, 6. China is at around 2.5%. They've been doing it for the last 30-40 years. Why R&D and innovation is important is that we are just at a time when the world is having challenge on the new growth areas, how we want to grow new. We have really used a lot of resources. We have spoiled the environment. All of that has happened. And you need to redefine the growth path. New areas will have to be sustained. So if you look at the achievement which you have done in the software industry, technology industry, something phenomenal in the last 30 odd years. We need to use that. I think we've used it greatly in the way the country is being governed today. Fantastic. You don't see it anywhere in the world. Fantastic. We'll have to recreate it in many industries. One of the key areas is, like just to tell you, if you look at the last 150 years in the world, it has come with, telephones. Then we have had the steam engines and combustion engines. We've gone through single innovation has pulled the world for some time. A new country, new growth areas have been created. Last 30-40 years has been the area of technology, and India has played a big role there. Now we have to use something in the light of the ESG framework, which we need to have. We have to do something dramatic in the agricultural side. Agriculture is one area where our productivity is horrible. If you have to give you a comparison between China actually has got lesser arable land than what we have. They have half of what we have. Their rainfall is half of what we have. They produce 3 times more than what we have, right? That's the difference between China and here. We really have to do a lot of micro irrigation. Water is wasted. Sewage water is not treated well. The surface water is messed up badly. We really need to invest a lot. Roads are good, but I think water is very, very crucial for improving the agriculture, because I think some of the challenges of, and we need to use a lot of technology in this, because water availability, using the water wisely. I think there was a reference to using cash crops. We have to do that. We have to make right choices. We also have to have that farm laws and many of the supporting legal system to sustain this, right? You really need to produce a lot more in agriculture to also sort out a lot of employment related problems as well. So water is a very, very critical resource. You have to use it very well, right? This is one. And also we have to add to this. I think I mentioned about the technology. 3-4 technologies are combining together, right? Now, one is hydrogen, solar, and we really have to, I think there is a reference by Shailesh ji on the cellular-based food industry, right? We can create artificial meat. You really need to sustain, we'll really need to do a lot of research in that and build it up. If you have a combination of this, you'll have a world where environment will not be that big a challenge, sustainability will not be that big a challenge. You really have to combine with agriculture and also with the artificial meat and artificial food related areas. A lot of research needs to be done. For doing all this, we need to we need to have a lot of PhDs. We don't innovate. There is no IP. It's really our education system, like we work in engineering industry, as in L&T, they're hardly employable. They just ratta ka system hai, right? They just read and mug and come. For 2 years, they can't contribute anything, right? Now, if you look at China, or if you look at many of the Southeast Asian countries, where does the technology come from? Even if you look at telecom, see, we don't need FDI money. We need technology. Technology is what is important. You have to send a lot of students. You need at least, right, in the next 5 years, you need to have at least maybe 25,000 PhDs in various areas of science, which you need to send abroad, because technology is there outside India. In most of the universities, still have to go there. Of course, the international universities can come here and study, but it has to be a two-way street. First, we have to send our people there, partly in the technology area, not in the management, but more in the technology area. We have to understand lots of things there. At least 25,000 PhDs are required. 50,000 masters in various subjects are required. Primarily, I mentioned the agriculture, I mentioned the meat, I mentioned the technology. We really have to scale up our understanding a lot more in this. We have to be top. No point in saying, I will use all this technology for India. You have to use the technology for the world. You have to be, then only your share of the world GDP can grow up. You have to do that. So you have to, education, we have to spend a lot of money, send people out. Government can sponsor, private can sponsor, together it can be done. We can have subsidized programs. If they come back, there are subsidies return. Otherwise, he has to pay back a much higher interest rate or whatever it is. We can come with some programs like that. Technology is important. For that, education is important. Technology is available outside in many universities. You have to go there, get the technology, and then reform your education system to build the great R&D framework, and companies should be encouraged to spend a lot more on R&D in many areas. I think some of the areas I mentioned on the food and all that is very critical. You also need these overseas Indians who are there outside India. Many of them have to come back. Some of them have come. I think some of the good things have, in the Bharat Biotech, Zoo. I think there's a reference of sea turtles. People come back. Many of the people have done some great job there. It is time for them to do great work in India. You'll have to create a system in which they are encouraged to come here. Let them make money. I think they will create the right environment for a significant growth for India. And if you look at a lot of innovation centers need to be there. If you look at the China strategy and India PLI is more towards internal consumption. How can I avoid imports from many parts of the world? I think we'll really have to change it to the different way where we can export technology related products to the world. Just to give an example, solar power is great in India. But without China, is there any solar power in India? Nothing. There is no solar power. There is no chip making industry. We are still dependent on everything from China, Taiwan, US, Western world. You really have to get to the basic of all of that. And for that, that's the reason I'm saying we have to send people outside, pick up the technology, build that. Companies need to spend more on technology, give them tax shops, whatever it is. All of that will happen, can happen. I think we'll have to spend a lot more technology-related spending in green, aerospace, ships, railways, power, medical, and education system will have to be. I think I would totally agree with what Shailaji talked about, the way we can reform the health sector, and so many other things is possible. So these are all my broad comments I had, and if there's any Q&A, we can take it later. Thank you.
Yeah. Perfectly, Govindan, with your very close with the whole thing happening India and abroad. You have clearly mentioned that the R&D and bringing either the external technology to India, or being the education center itself becoming a center of excellency for technology. Similarly, our people who have gone abroad and made good money, now is the time for India, because India is now next for the world as a whole, will be bringing the growth driver. So we need the that brain drain which has taken place, they need to come back. That is a really, if they are, of course, because they have made money and their presence in India would be useful, and India also will provide that opportunity. So that is very clearly brought, and we need to find new drivers of growth in terms of our export of manufactured goods or services. We have to diversify. That can come again with the R&D and technology. So the adoption. So thank you, Govindan. Really, you have analyzed and given a very good suggestion. Now we have Krishnan Sitaram, as I mentioned, being in a rating agency and also part of the CRISIL, of course, S&P also, and knowing the global various studies and their growth estimation and all, particularly from the financial sector, how that could shape up in our drive towards 2047. Mr. Krishnan Sitaraman will talk now. Krishnan?
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Narendra.
Sorry for delaying you.
No problem. Am I audible?
Yeah, clearly.
Excellent. Very good evening to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you and your near and dear ones are safe and maintaining good health. At the outset, I would like to thank ENQUBE Collaborations and Dr. Narendra for inviting me to participate in this webinar on what I must say is a very topical theme, given where the nation is today and where we could be in the next 25 years or so. It is indeed my absolute pleasure to be amongst all of you this evening. I would also like to thank all the distinguished speakers at this webinar who have spoken so far for their views and perspectives. And it has been a great learning experience for me so far. So now, as Dr. Narendra mentioned, I will be talking about the Indian financial sector landscape, where we are today and how we are structurally, I would say, stronger than we were there in the past, the challenges we face, and the road ahead. Given the circumstances that we are in today, the word challenges is what comes to our mind quickly. The three waves of the COVID-19 pandemic brought with them challenges that we have not seen in our lifetimes. The Indian economy degrew for the first time in 4 decades in FY21, with an estimated minus 6.6% degrowth. That was the impact of the first wave of the pandemic and the accompanying stringent lockdowns. But just as the recovery was beginning to take root after the first wave, the second wave of the pandemic in Q1 of FY22 once again impacted both prospects. And in the second wave, actually, the medical or health impact was much more than the first wave, with a higher number of infections, hospitalizations, and unfortunately deaths. The second wave's impact was far more widespread geographically as compared to the first wave, with tier 3 and tier 4 towns and rural areas also getting impacted. That said, impact on economic activity was less than that seen in the first wave, as the lockdowns were less stringent and the nation, as a nation, we were getting accustomed to how to handle the pandemic. Then subsequently, with our vaccination initiatives making significant progress and also being appreciated by various global leaders, the third wave's impact on the economy was quite minimal, with FY22 GDP estimated to come in at a growth of 8.7%. This, in a way, is reflective of the resilience of our great nation and our people. And despite the greatest of challenges, we are able to take them in our stride and move ahead. In fact, this resilience in the financial sector has been clearly manifested in the banking system, where despite challenges, we have seen a steady improvement across operating metrics, with NPAs coming down, capitalization strengthening, and profitability improving. This has enabled the banks to register a credit growth of 9.6% in FY22, up from about 5% in FY21, and in line with the 9 to 10% range that CRISIL Ratings had projected a year back. Now, in the current fiscal, we expect the momentum to continue, with bank credit growth rising to 11 to 12%. Of course, we will need to keep a watch on the near-term impact of the geopolitical issues arising from the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which could keep commodity prices high for some more time. Moving on, I would now like to touch upon the long-term impediments that are not allowing the Indian financial sector and economy to realize its full potential. Some of these are inadequate financial infrastructure, capital constraints, supply side bottlenecks, the recoveries from non-performing assets, lack of economies of scale, and also the ability to provide large-scale employment for people coming through the ranks. And in that regard, I also echo Mr. Anant Narayan's sentiments as he had so eloquently expressed a little while back. Next, let me move on to the opportunities and the road ahead. Now, despite the challenges and issues that we face, given the large Indian population and considerable scope for further penetration of financial services, there is significant potential for the industry to grow over the long term. Which brings me to another key component of my speech today, that is reforms in the financial sector. Now, I would consider reforms as tools which help to structurally strengthen the financial sector and help to put the sector on the path towards achieving and making optimum use of the opportunities inherent in the economy. While there have been a number of financial sector reforms which have been announced in the last few years, I will touch upon 10 such measures briefly, which I believe have the potential to revamp India's financial sector and take it to the next level over the next few years. Now, these are as follows. Firstly, insolvency and bankruptcy code. Number 2, recapitalization of public sector banks. 3, enhancing deposit insurance coverage. 4, improving governance processes at public sector banks. 5, the mega merger of public sector banks. 6, privatization of some of the public sector banks. 7, strengthening of regulatory framework for NBFCs. Next, setting up of a development financial institution. Also setting up of a national ARC. And lastly, the on-tap licensing for banks. Now, very briefly, to touch upon each of these measures and the benefits they are expected to bring. Firstly, the IBC, in my opinion, is a path-breaking reform in dealing with stressed assets and improving credit culture with its creditor and control model and specified timelines around steps involved. And already we have seen some good results and changes in borrower behavior, leading to better and quicker recoveries by use of the code. At the same time, we still have a long way to go before the full anticipated benefits from the IBC are achieved to the full extent. Over time, we believe that the IBC should also help in broad-basing bond markets. Now, coming to the recapitalization of banks, in the last 4 to 5 years, we've seen a capital infusion of around rupees 3 lakh crores into public sector banks. If the government had not done this, there was a real risk of bank failures and threat to the stability of the financial sector. But with this capital infusion, the capital position of public sector banks is substantially better now than it has been in the last 5 years. Next, the enhancement in deposit insurance coverage by increasing it 5-fold is a step in the right direction, as it will increase depositor confidence and support the more vulnerable sections of the society from losing their hard-earned savings in case of bank failures. Fourthly, the measures to enhance governance levels at PSBs will to some extent address the demands from market participants in this space and enhance resilience of PSBs and also increase disclosure and transparency. Moving on, the mega merger of PSBs, resulting in the formation of 4 public sector banks from 10, was a step towards leveraging economies of scale and enhancing operational efficiencies. And this had actually followed mergers of Bank of Baroda with Vijaya Bank and Dena Bank, as well as the merger of State Bank of India with its 7 associate banks in the previous years. Coming to the 6th reform, that's the announcement of privatization of a few public sector banks by the government, clearly showing the intention of the government to enhance competition and unleash the efficiencies in the sector. That would also in some ways be a potential watershed moment for the Indian banking sector. After pointing out to a number of recent reforms largely directed at banks, I would also like to touch upon the NBFC sector, where we have seen, again, announcement of reforms like the recent step towards revamping the regulatory framework for NBFCs, like the scale-based regulations, and more recently, we saw a level playing field being brought in for microfinance institutions and so on. Now, these would help in enhancing governance levels and disclosure and transparency, and also structurally strengthen the sector over the long term. The next reform on my list is the setting up of the Developmental Financial Institution, NAPFID. Now, the government's national infrastructure pipeline with over 7,000 projects and a cumulative outlay of 111 lakh crore will require a regular flow of long-term credit at reasonable rates. Now, a professionally managed development financial institution with an initial capital of rupees 20,000 crore and a target of 5 lakh crore of project funding over the next 3 years is seen as a step in this direction. And banks clearly will not be able to meet all the funding needs of the infrastructure sector. Number 9 on my list is the setting up of the national ARC. With the government backing at a large size and scale, it will be well positioned to resolve some of the large legacy stressed assets in the banking sector. It is reported that already over rupees 80,000 crore of legacy NPAs are expected to be transferred this year, this fiscal, to the national ARC. And last but not the least, the on-tap licensing of banks will provide a good opportunity for NBFCs to convert to a more stable legal dispensation. Because if they start becoming too large, that is when funding access challenges become a greater vulnerability for NBFCs. Now, having discussed these 10 measures briefly, what needs to be kept in mind is that while these are all good measures on paper, proper implementation and execution will be the key to their success. We have in the past seen a number of conceptually good, sound measures fail due to faulty implementation. We do hope that for the measures that I have referred to, implementation challenges are not found to be insurmountable. Now, after talking about financial sector reforms, I would also like to make a mention of the challenges that the Indian financial sector has faced in the last few years on account of the pandemic and how various players are taking steps to face up to the challenges. Clearly, as compared to the last couple of years, today, lenders are better prepared by use of what I refer to as the LPC framework. Here, L stands for maintaining higher liquidity on the balance sheet despite negative carry it entails. P stands for having higher provisioning cover, and C stands for higher capitalization and lower leverage. Now, use of the LPC framework is helping banks and NBFCs to fortify their balance sheets and enhance their resilience. In addition, another common thread that we are seeing is the enhanced technology enablement of business processes and embracing of digitization by both banks and NBFCs, which apart from increasing efficiencies, is also helping them to be more responsive to customers. Over the long term, I do feel that the Indian economy has the inherent strength to recover from the pandemic-related adversities and chart a growth path for the future. In fact, even if we take care of the basic necessities like roti, kapda, and makan, and add to that increase financial inclusion and penetration of financial services, that itself will give good tailwinds for the sector to move ahead. And as compared to adversities seen in the past, I think we are better placed today to navigate them and bounce back. Our current GDP forecast for this fiscal is 7.3%, which is among the highest for all major countries. Going ahead, I think 4 steps, which if they align themselves, will go a long way in achieving our full potential. I am calling this as the RISE framework, that is RISE. And let me touch upon what they stand for. R stands for reforms, a supportive reform-oriented policy environment with government engaging with industry closely in policy formulation and regulation development will be quite useful. Then I stands for implementation. A relentless focus on implementation or execution of reforms is very important for them to be successful. Next, we come to S. S stands for streamlining processes in aspects like enhancing supply chain, improving logistics, having single window clearances, and so on. And E stands for environment, to create an environment which needs to be conducive for attracting foreign capital and strengthening of bond markets. So what I'm saying is that if we follow these steps, the financial sector in India can definitely rise to be among the most prominent ones in the world over the years to come. I would like to conclude by re-emphasizing that there is definite scope for a bright future for the Indian financial sector, as there are fundamental strengths that India has because of its demographics, on account of which both supply and demand side dynamics for this financial sector can thrive. The question is not if, but when. With that, I come to the end of my speech. Thank you very much for your patient hearing and for being such a wonderful audience. Over to you, Dr. Narendra.
Thank you, Krishna Sitaraman. And clearly, how banking and the financial sector currently fully strengthened and fully empowered to meet the needs of the productive needs of the economy with the capitalization, provision coverage, and the credit growth itself is visible, and the projection of credit growth, and various 10 measures which are undertaken in the course of the last 2-3 years in the various budget. Almost all have been implemented. IBC almost 6 years, and this national asset reconstruction company is already in place. I think already people have been given, and the what you call development finance institution also have been made, and privatization of 2 public sector bank and IDBI bank is in the progress. So I think, and with the last rise, you have given clear cut, in terms of the reforms, implementation, as well as streamlining and environment creation, environment enabled in terms of the whole ecosystem. Thank you, Krishna Sitaram. Now we have a few questions coming from the audience also, and I would like to ask Govindan that our Shailesh also talked about the legal reforms, and as a corporate, how do you find particularly like arbitration and other enforcement of contracts, particularly the foreign company also when they come into India, they see how the enforcement of contracts are taking place, how the legal system is protecting them. And IBC was one of the guidelines for exit strategy also. So one is that is the question to Govindan. Similarly, my another question is, there have been always a debate whether India needs to follow the Chinese model of manufacturing, or manufacturing should grow from 18% to 25%, or the service sector led growth. So these two I would like to have, because you came on the last, so I want these two to be covered by you. Mr.
Yes.
Govindan, you are there?
Yeah. I think you can hear me, right?
Yeah, clearly. Yeah.
Yeah. See, the contract, the judicial system is one of the most backward systems we have today. I think I don't know. There are no lawyers here. I keep hearing that 150K families. Only all the Supreme Court cases come from 150, 200 families, and I can't understand the size of India and size of states, the number of people. I don't think we can relate to the size of the judicial system. It's completely mired with bureaucracy. It takes 25 years, 50 years for things to be. See, let it be from the individual to corporations and international, and no disputes get settled for 30, 40 years. I think somebody just got convicted after 30 years after a road accident. I don't want to mention the name. 25 years or 30 years. I mean, justice delayed is justice denied. I mean, absolutely you need to have clear-cut systems and processes for that. You need to use digital related areas. We really have to reform a lot in that area, because in any commercial area, in anything you do, there will always be some disputes. Let it be between people and companies, government, all of that, right? And arbitration related will have to be given a bit more. So I mean, today if you look at the contract, everything is. If you look at government processes, it's everything is L1, right? Everything is price. It is not on the basis of merit or the quality, right? Quality is not given that much importance. And contract law, it's always disputed. Things go to Supreme Court. Things take 15, 20 years. I think some of the cases which we have is 25, 30 years old, and no solution. You spend huge amount of money in litigation. So we really need to reform this significantly. I think the only way is to improve digital I think that the past cases, we really need to compress it, convert it into a decision, and everything cannot keep landing in Supreme Court. And also the judicial system needs to have accountability. It can't be an independent thing which hangs on its own. You really need to have a lot of judges. That five areas of constitution, the democracy. I don't think the judicial system is one of the weak links we have. So we need to do a lot of work on that. Without that, all these things will not, whatever we talked about 2047, nothing will come. Nothing is going to come without judicial. It's one of the most backward processes we have. People may be genuine, but I think the system is really atrociously bad. I am very sorry to be very blunt on this. We need to really do a lot of changes. The second area, whether you want to skip the manufacturing and all that, I think we will have to coexist. I don't think we'll have to, there's no point in repeating, trying to relearn what China has done and try to do the same thing here. You have to go the green way. You have to go in hydrogen. You have to go forward there, right? And maybe it is not possible for us to do everything. We are still probably be dependent on China and some countries. Like I will give an example. Most of the Indian companies, we don't innovate. R&D spend is very poor. Last 25 years, so many Western companies, Western countries have had the solar technology. Germany had the solar technology for the last 40 years, 30, 40 years. Every rooftop, it was always there, right? Very highly subsidized, 100 rupees per unit and stuff like that. It was like a good thing to have. I mean, it is like, they're doing social service. That is how it used to be. Technology used to be available to the companies. Chips and all that used to be available for the company. But companies cannot do it. So it is important in some of the new areas where India has to grow forward. You can't leave to Indian individual companies only. You really need to, like, the US war with China is on technology basis. Even India's challenge with China's challenge with India is probably because of clean water, which is record for chip manufacturing. That is a problem they have with Taiwan. I think if you look at the river disputes and the way they are supporting, so so the country needs to get involved in technology. You need to have maybe 100,000 crores provided for technology by Indian government. Private sector will contribute equally. We will create individual centers of excellence. We will focus on technology. We'll get the best of people from the world. We will send people out. The 200,000-300,000 crores per annum is enough really to create a new world as a starter. And what is already discovered, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. What China has done, please, there's no point in just repeating everything here. I think what is possible, you have to focus on the new areas of growth. What is there available, I don't think we'll be wasting time in trying to redo those. See, what is available from China at the lowest cost possible, it's no point in repeating it. You have to use it and move to the higher level technology. There are some local areas where a lot of technology is possible to be used. I mentioned the water related, micro irrigation, and some of the work is already happening. I think many of the people will be surprised to know that there is Kalahandi, which used to be a district in Odisha, used to be very poor and drought, all of that. Now there are spectacular changes happening in the irrigation area. It is not known, it is not celebrated in India, unfortunately. But a lot more projects are required. Interstate river disputes and water-related problems are there. We need to, as a system, we need to find solutions there. There you don't need Chinese technology. We can do it ourselves. I think we just have to implement the infrastructure and use digitize. In fact, field level, even metering systems for water is also there in many states now. I think in some of the states in MP, some of the states are very, very progressive in that they're going to metering even water, right? And satellite, Gati Shakti, I think it's a great start. It's a great start. Using satellite technology to see what is there under the ground, create the digital records and the technology actually it tells you what is there in India right through, and it can see through 10 meters into the ground. You can really use technology to create huge, nice infrastructure, link it to the land records, remove all the infrastructural problems and all of that, yeah, land records need to be sorted out. I think that will be a permanent source of dispute. Generally speaking, in many parts of the world, we'll have to sort out many of these things. But I feel we should not reinvent what China is doing and other places are doing all the time. Don't go back 2000 years saying that, oh, don't reinvent the wheel. Move to the next area of growth with the world needs. We'll have to control the world. We have to control the technology. No point in only being an applicator of technology, being the largest market for the world. You have to be the world. Yeah, people have to listen, come here for technology.
Thank you, Govindan, because that's why I wanted that question to be you only. Now, Anantarayan, that there is a question that whatever we are happening in US, UK or Euro area and all, in terms of the inflation, mentioning that it is a transitory, then it became now 88% plus inflation and all. We never heard in a country like US. And whether that is country like India, where is as rightly said, you said not only oil, we are dependent on so many things in import. So the question by somebody is, what it will have impact on the balance of payment, our current account deficit, and of course it will not go up because our forex reserves are better. But what do you see? It will be maybe until 1.5 years, or we are because when we are talking 2047, we need a inflation what you call indexed or what adjusted good income, per capita income among the people. And another is, if you have some solution for this unemployment, what you said, all that, okay, what is the solution? These two I want to hear from you.
Thank you, sir. I'll try and keep this short.
Yeah.
On the first question of the external world, it is clearly very complicated. There are both risks as well as opportunities, the way I see it. Clearly, because of geopolitics, the price of oil commodities going up is a huge problem for us. We import 1.4 billion barrels of crude oil every year. Every $10 increase in oil prices increases our cost on trade deficit and current account deficit by $14 billion or so, roughly. Okay. Along with crude oil, it's also agricultural prices. The FAO food index is at all-time highs. It's also fertilizer prices. It's also feedstock prices. It's also now, of course, thankfully, some commodity prices are coming down. Fertilizer prices, edible oil prices are coming down. But overall, commodity prices going up as a result of geopolitics and the global situation, very, very bad news for us, clearly. Global inflation is not just about commodities. It's also about supply chains in China. It's also because of COVID in China, which created huge logjams on supply, etc. You're right, sir. The inflation in the developed markets is 40, 50-year highs. We've not seen this since the 70s and the 80s. India as well, unfortunately, inflation in this fiscal year, FY23, has a risk of crossing 7% on average. It is not as bad as the US, but remember that we've had consistent inflation for 3 years now. So our compounded annual growth rate of inflation for the last 3 years is 6.5%. Whereas our GDP as of FY22 is exactly what it was 2 years ago, or maybe 1% higher. So growth has hardly happened, whereas inflation has been there consistently. Not a good sign at all. But in all of this, sir, there's also an opportunity. Where are the opportunities? Because of this issues around geopolitics, and because China is having this problem with the Western markets, China plus one has become a policy imperative for many, many companies. As I mentioned when I was speaking, every company is looking at trying to reduce the dependence on one particular location for supplies, etc. Supply chains, China has been the master, sir. Over the last 30, 40 years, they've really mastered that area a lot. And to that extent, I think opportunities come for other countries. With our large size, nearly 1.4 billion people, we offer not only a market, we also offer a manufacturing base. And things like Atmanirbhar Bharat, PLI, etc., are definitely attractive. So to that extent, we have an opportunity. As I mentioned earlier, the CA said very well, the biggest opportunity is coming from the work that China is doing for us by creating all these supply chain issues and all that. On the point about how do we create jobs, sir, I just want to add to what Mr. Govindan said, and I completely agree with what he said. On this question of is it manufacturing versus services, it has to be everything that creates non-agricultural jobs, sir.
Jobs.
I don't think it is a question of us. Yes, of course, the opportunities in digital, the opportunities in services is very, very high. And I'm sure we will, jump and leap across some of these opportunities. But there are definitely opportunities in manufacturing as well. I was just going through, sir, the import bill that we had with China. So the total trade deficit in calendar year 2021 with China was about $64.5 billion as per our trade data. The big items, $25.4 billion is electrical machinery, nuclear reactors, boilers, machinery, etc. is almost $18 billion. Organic chemicals, $9 billion. Plastics, $3.8 billion. Fertilizers, $2.7 billion. Optical instruments, $2.2 billion. All these are manufactured items. These are now, I can't for the life of me, not all of this is, extremely high-tech chips, which we don't have the technology for, which we'll have to inculcate over a period of time. Some of this is very, very simple stuff. I can give you examples. As I said, I teach at SPJMR. I can give you examples of people in the family managed businesses who have stopped manufacturing things like weighing machines. And instead, they found it more useful to import weighing machines from Malaysia, which has a per capita income far higher than ours. And just, be a sales agent and sell it in India. So they've closed down factories in Nashik, which employed 100 people. And now they employ 10 salespeople to import material from, weighing machines from Malaysia and sell it here. My daughter's classmate, her father, has just closed a factory in Tirupur and opened some time back a factory in Dhaka to manufacture textiles. Of course, it's a complicated issue. It's not just one item, but I'm saying the fact that we are losing these kind of manufacturing jobs, I think is a real shame. These are definite opportunities that exist. Finally, sir, I agree with you that I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows the solution to jobs over the next, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Because the nature of jobs will change with all this artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, automation. Things will change. We don't know what the solutions are. But the best way we can prepare our children for the future is not plan their future. Empower them to take care of the future, whichever way it develops, which is where the focus on education, the focus on healthcare, the focus on sanitation, on public services is so critical. So we grew up and managed our generation, right? Thanks to the fact that our parents invested in our education, etc. Likewise, if we can invest in their education, the children are smart. They will take care of the future. They'll take care of us as well. That's the best investment we can do for 20 years, 30 years future.
Thank you, Anant Narayan, because I also read one article that by promoting PLI and all that and promoting manufacturing, and other than that, these people, they are later adopting Industry 4, and with the robotics, what you said, the Industry 4 type of manufacturing, the opportunity for job will be on the higher side in techno related, but lower side in terms of the factory level workers. Whereas in the service sector, the adoption of laborers or what you call qualified people are very high. So they say that why we should not focus on the service sector, which has already proved. Of course, it is debatable. So now
the simple answer there, sir, is both. Please give us jobs. Let's not show any partiality. Get whatever.
So what you said, I agree with the Govindan that type of education in the education institution also will have to undergo change. The change in the new requirements, and similarly academic excellence alone will not help. They have to have a technological excellence, and they have to be innovative. They have to create the new ecosystem of that. What we are happening, the startup or e-commerce, new things, fintech, all this, they are likely to, that system will likely to contribute greater contribution to GDP. And some of the legacy industries will be disturbed also, or that will be disruption will come. Charan Singh Saab, there is one or two questions to you. One, somebody has specifically asked one question. You would have seen in a question there that with all this growth with the equity is not really happening, and the divide between haves and have-nots, and particularly some of the lower state of the people or the people who are seeking a job and other things, there is a social unrest and social tension. And he has pointed out that it is around 20%. So how are we to, in the 2047, our maybe 25 trillion economy, is there any roadmap to reduce this tension and make a growth really with the equity? Second question of mine is for you, sir, that you clearly brought FRBM Act and all. Now, in view of that, the fact that currently the government space of investment is going to come down with the 80% or above their domestic borrowing, it is, whereas they are supposed to borrow not more than 60. It may be temporary. And we had a real, what you call, buoyancy in the direct and indirect tax. So my question is not on that. Current going below above 4% was needed. But my question is, how come we could reduce some subsidy? This food subsidy is becoming a very big problem with the global price going. So there are so many such subsidy, fertilizer subsidy, all that. If there can be, because that also one area by which, because there is some comment that even PLI scheme with the incentives, you are attracting industry for their sales turnover and around 2 lakh crores. Is it a correct policy, or whether they should on their own, private sector, why should we give the incentive? So the incentive and subsidy, there was a long-term objective of the government to eliminate that. And in this, if you have some points, sir, these 2 points, please cover.
I totally agree with you, Dr. Narendra. This employment is a very big issue. And you must have seen the agitations in the last 1 week. And that's a clear indication that the youth is feeling unsatisfied and they're looking for opportunities very eagerly, but they're not getting those opportunities. And anything that happens, they're so suspicious. So I agree, unemployment and demographic dividend should not turn into a demographic disaster. These are burning issues. Now, what's the solution? Can the government give them jobs? I don't think they can. Can the public sector give them jobs? If you're going to privatize, you're going for asset monetization, even the private sector will face a challenge. Public sector will face a challenge. Artificial intelligence, machine learning would mean that things getting automated very fast. Then where are the jobs? So my reading is, it is MSMEs that will provide all the jobs. So therefore, regularly on different forums, I've started saying that instead of Indian Institute of Management, you need to now open Indian Institute of Entrepreneurship, where you should offer a 3-year course, degree course. Young man is brought in with certain threshold level of education, taught how to become an entrepreneur. It has to come from within, but you can polish it up. But you can teach the guy on that entrepreneur should know accounting, labor laws, management, and he should also have some values on ethics and environmental concerns. So he becomes a responsible citizen. But startups is the only way you can. So MSMEs, startup culture has to come in a big way. So there has to be a failure fund in case you did a startup and suddenly couldn't survive. I don't think there should be a stigma, and to survive and get up again if there is a failure fund. And I don't think Indians need to be too shy of failure. Means I always keep narrating a story. While I was doing my postdoctorate at Stanford for 18 months, I used to interact a lot with the angel investors and startup culture in Silicon Valley. I used to ask the angel investors, what do you invest in? And one of the criteria they told me, if somebody comes for the first time, is the first startup, we're a little wary. If it's a second startup, we feel confident. The success teaches you a lot, but failure teaches you much more. So therefore, there's no stigma on failure. And I think we need to start building that culture in our country. Otherwise, absorbing this huge demography is going to be a challenge. So I think we need to start thinking in terms of agriculture. Universities served a very important purpose in 60s and 70s. We are now totally food independent. But now, same campuses of agriculture universities lying idle and vacant. Because not much is required there. Why can't the same campus be used for Indian Institute of Entrepreneurship? So I think we need to start thinking out of the box. Your second question on the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act and how much leeway do we have given the constraints that we are in. And the first thing which everybody will tell, hey, let's cut the subsidies. And when it comes to subsidies, nobody will tell you that let's axe PLI, but they will tell you let's axe food subsidy or fertilizer subsidy. So that is how the mentality has become. And I think the mentality has come from the Washington consensus. Because whatever Washington used to say, and they account for 1/5 of the world economy, and whatever they say is gospel truth. So therefore, India started saying food subsidy is bad. But at the end of the day, you have noticed on one hand, with income inequalities increasing, urban life quality improving dramatically, has it really percolated down to the rural areas? If they are making high profits, if they are very rich, one or two farmers I'm not counting, I'm talking of the general farmers who own such small land pieces, has their income doubled? If not, then obviously when you provide food subsidy, you are providing food security to the whole nation. So to my mind, certain essentials like the food subsidy will continue. To my mind, if you have to capture and record highest exports, PLI schemes have to continue. The costing can't be done on the scheme just directly, but there are so many indirect benefits that emerge from these subsidies, and if all of those are captured, they are pretty beneficial to the country. Cost benefit analysis can't be done on one single transaction. It has to be balanced out over a period of time. So my reading is, despite the fact that the gross fiscal deficit is rising, the debt to GDP ratio is rising, but during difficult times that we are in, some tolerance and some flexibility in the band has to be considered. The Western world does not care for the rating agencies. And it is the rating agencies which look at you as a monitor. Look at their debt to GDP ratios. They've all gone beyond 100. What are we shy of? The first thing is we have to take care of the vast multitudes of people in the farmland. We have to ensure that food security for the country is assured. And then we will look at the rating agencies and what they talk.
Thank you, Charan Singh ji. That is a very practically this, and that itself is the growth of the equity, because the fact that as a responsible government, and they need to be careful about the people who really deserve to have. And as you rightly said earlier, this direct benefit transfer has ensured that there is a proper usage of the subsidy, and there is no leakage. And linking of Aadhaar, mobile, and Jan Dhan Yojana, that JAM Trinity has really helped. Like, around 6 lakh crores of government, these various payment of 66 schemes went through this DBT in the last 2021-22. So this is the power of technology and the banks which prepared that, and with that directly receiving at the final end and end use also. So now, Srikant ji, being in the very close to the government, and you are always in the where is a policy making, and you definitely will have some thinking what one or two things the government should do for our journey towards, because very our prime minister is always mentioning what he call the improvement in governance, transparency, and limited government, more of others, that involvement and all. And similarly, he has clearly mentioned from the so far we have been in the developing country and also maybe middle level country. Now we have to become developed country. Now what type of changes it will also bring in the entire functionary level at the government, functional level also. I don't want to say IAS or anything, but in the overall function level, there must be elevated thinking and elevated foresight. So what could be the government role? Because you have heard everybody on various social sectors, manufacturing, agriculture, all that. So if you have one or two suggestion as the final comment from you, along with that, of course, I will come to Goel also. And one round, everybody has to give me what is the final their figure as to 2047, what would be the level of our GDP. That is the one, and what may be the average growth rate. That is the final. But we are already 7:05, so we have to finish another 10 minutes, sir. Please.
The most important thing, according to me, is we have wonderful policies in place, but in implementation, it is very poor. There are many reasons. We need a lot of reforms in the government systems, both at central and especially both in central as well as state level, and more on state level, because states most of the states are bankrupt. They don't have enough finance, neither they have expertise. Accountability needs to be built up against all kind of jobs, particularly with government jobs, to see that implementation is rapid and progressive. It has been attempted time to time, but things has not taken pace as far. Monitoring and evaluation system of the projects are absolutely poor. That needs to be enhanced. Legal system, it is divided, there is a lot of dependency. Like this, the four pillars of democracy, they need to be equally made stronger. And ultimately, the public, the education, health, and all the people should are less and more aware about many things. But even if they are not educated, but it is not reflecting that in a democracy, vibrant democracy, if people demand, things happens. There is not very aggressive demand from people's side, so far as political, social, economical rights of the people are concerned. That is not getting reflected. That is an indicator that democracy is not working properly. There could be many reasons, but these are the very basic and fundamental reasons. In political system, the political funding and needs a huge reformation, because politicians have 5 years tenure. They are the key policy makers, at the top, and their visions are always short-sighted because their tenure period is less, and there are many loopholes in the system. So everybody is keen to see his own progress path, and people take advantage of the loopholes. So we need to strengthen all these things on the eve of 75 years. And there are many things. I'm not going to that because of.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. And please put all your video now. We'll ask organizer or somebody to take one photograph of all of you. And so coming with the Mr. Govindan, by 2047, what could be the GDP growth?
I think,
or what is the size of our economy? Size of our economy?
Size of our economy, I think we'll probably grow at around 6% from here, sir. I provided we do whatever we said. If we don't do innovation and all that, then it can drift lower. But 6% is a very
yours is 6 to 7.
6%
because
real,
6% that is the average now. But otherwise, they say for capturing the whatever leftover or what you call slight setback, we need earlier it was told 8 to 9%, but even 6 to 6.5% in the new changing scenario is good. Okay.
Relatively, sir, my sense is that other parts of the world will be growing lower. So we will be growing at 6.
Yes.
Other people will be lower. So we will, as a share, will be much higher. So we used to be 40% of world GDP in 1100 AD. We became something like 3-4% on a PPP basis. We are probably at around 5, 6 or 7 now. I think we will go back to something like maybe 1300, 1200. Maybe we'll become something like 15% of world GDP, sir, by then.
15% of world GDP. Yes, Anant Narayan, you have any estimation?
I tend to agree with Govindan. I'll only add that I think this will be 6% in dollar terms. And I would say that the more important metric is per capita income rather than looking at overall GDP. I think per capita income, which is about $2,000 in dollar terms, will probably reach about $10,000 by 2047. Very, very dependent on implementation. We will still achieve growth, sir, even if we don't implement all that we discussed, but we'll be underperforming our potential if we don't implement.
Thank you. Thank you. Our MM Goel sir, that there was some question also on what I will not, because of time I'm not asking. The work culture as well as in education sector also needs a lot of reforms. And they say, why not you have a more engagement with the industries rather than people like us, we are having a guest faculty, sim time and all. So you must encourage, and you have heard from others also, there is a lot of things to be done in the education. So what can be with the good education sector, how that could add to the GDP? Just one or two sentences.
More action research. More action research.
Honestly speaking, there is a trade-off between quality and quantity.
Yeah.
As an economist, we always say that if we want to have quality, we will have to sacrifice quantity. But at the same time, democracy says that we have to increase our gross enrollment ratio, which is being targeted in my beloved country. But at the same time, we cannot expect that important role in terms of the quantity. But so far quality is concerned, artificial intelligence is in play, uses are fine, misuses are also taking place, cyber crimes are there. Therefore, taking into account all that, the rate of growth in the economy is between 6 to 7%. But if it is adjusted with the inflation rate, which is going to increase, even if the same methodology is there, if methodology is changed to calculate the inflation rate, probably rate of growth can be around 10%.
10%. Okay. Yeah. That is the one earlier estimated. So Krishna Sitaraman, what by all hearing so many things now, how are the global and domestic rating agency and all of them? Because they constantly change. But from the medium and long-term growth, how do you see India?
Yeah, we as CRISIL, we look at the domestic perspectives only. And if you look at how we look at the economy, there are fundamental strengths there. And if you are asking me about the next 25 years, my personal, we have officially not put out anything.
Yes.
But my personal view is that we could be a $20 trillion economy in the next 25 years' time. And that would be among the top 3 countries. And as per UN data, we will overtake China by then in terms of population. So we will be the most populous country and among the 3 largest economies. Of course, for that, a number of things has to fall in place, like the quality of lives to improve, infrastructure to improve, technology orientation, the urban-rural divide has to come down. But I think if we move towards, if reforms are in place, we can be a $20 trillion economy by 2047.
Thank you. Charan Singh ji, aapka kuch hai, sir?
Let me add, Narendra, one sentence. Many of us are careless. Many of us are useless. To make many of us to be careful, to be useful for the society, to enter into Swarnim Bharat in 2014.
Yes. We cannot say, nobody should think that we are useless or like that. We have a full opportunity. And even that is what, the one area I suggest that all those who are above 60, they should be ready for new utilization for India. Then the productivity will definitely go because that experience will add to the growth. So Charan Singh ji, last aapka aur baad mein hamara Srikant ka, with that I am closing. Yeah.
So I would think that India's per capita income will, the income of the nation should grow in the range of 7 to 8%. That's where I would put it. Now, please remember, we are 2 to 3 trillion. China is 12 trillion. America is 21 trillion. When we grow at 10%, we add what? But when China grows at 5%, it grows faster than us. And when we are thinking of a $20 trillion economy, which is 10 times more than what we are today, China is not going to sit back and keep smiling. They're 12 trillion, they'll be 120 trillion. And America, which is 21 trillion, will be 2,100. So just imagine So the point that I'm trying to make is because we are the fastest growing economy does not mean we will automatically become 20%, 10%, 15% of the world economy. We are on a very low base, and that's what worries me a lot. I think the advisors to the politicians, they give them very big dreams, but the ground reality is that on a very big base, like America or China, if they grow at half the rate at which we grow, they are still growing in general terms faster than us.
Correct.
Keep that in mind.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if we have to, and when we say that we will become a $20 trillion economy, what exchange rate are we assuming?
Correct.
That's very important.
That is very important.
Today, the exchange rate is 78. 25 years from today, what is the exchange rate that we are assuming that will become 20 trillion? So that I think we need to go very granular, because what happens when senior politicians listen to such beautiful high-rise building dreams, then they ask people like me, and when I point out these things, they say you are a pessimist. You do not know anything. You are probably somewhere else. But I'm requesting everybody and people above 60, because we carry the gravity of maturity and sobriety and experience with us, that these calculations have to be done by us. So let me sum up by saying my own assumption is we will be growing around 7 to 8%, which is continuously going to be large. We are a very large country, but will we grab and increase our global share? I'm not very sure. Until we change our policies and we challenge the existing policies within our country. You saw what happened with agriculture reforms. It's in front of everyone. You are seeing what is happening with little labor reforms in the defense services and recruitment. So therefore, we have to be very cautious. And I don't think I have been able to successfully formulate what share of global GDP will we be in 2047.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, because time is... Srikanti, you had anything to talk? Because time is already 15 minutes.
I will say that the most important things that in our education system and everywhere, the belongingness for national feelings and national sentiments, that needs to be enhanced. And if you see the history, the foreign invaders has ruled us only because we have never remained united. So in other countries, after +2, one has to go for a military training or something like that, which creates a sense of belongingness for the nation. And that is extremely important at this point of power.
So on behalf of ENQUBE collaboration and on my personal behalf, I am very much grateful to all the valued and eminent what you call panelists, and 3 hours of your valuable time you have spent for our benefit in terms of the India and India's all ourselves. And there have been very serious participants, active participants throughout the program, and it was there also had a patience to be appreciated. 3 hours they're there, and a good amount of feedback, positive feedback of the level of discussion and the contents of the discussion that has come. That is only due to you. With this, I thank all of you. I thank the participants. I thank the backup supporter, Praveen Udupa, for the backup support, and entirely the press and media and others who were maybe there in that. And there is a clear-cut guidance that this entire suggestion and proceedings in a very well drafted, somebody said that this should be sent to the think tank of the Niti Aayog or the government. So that means the quality of your discussion. Thank you very much. Good night to all of you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.